You stand just beyond the threshold of evening, that place where daylight yawns and disappears, soft and unfinished, like a promise broken halfway. The air leans in, cool and scentless, as if the sun has turned away and left the world exposed. You breathe in the hush of your own boots against hard-packed earth, the faint scrape of leather meeting clay and straw. There is no candle, only the faint insistence of dusk, and you trudge across the yard carrying that emptiness like a small stone in your pocket. The walls of the cottage press inward, uneven and crooked in the dim. Each crack is a whisper. Drafts creep in, not quite felt yet, but already tugging at the hem of your tunic. You pull it tighter around your ribs, as though that might bar the chill. A sling of straw beneath your feet cracks quietly, small protestations, the sound like accusations. You do not stop. You know better. Tonight, you gather just enough firewood to coax a flame, but never enough to trust it will stay. You crouch before the hearth, your palms cupping the embers left from yesterday's hearth banking, small glowing bones that resist your coaxing. You whisper not to heat, but to ember, to tease warmth from ash. The bellows, battered, sits silent beside you, heirlooms of hope. You lift them, brace your arms, and breathe in a slow rhythm, in and out, until gray smoke curls upward, and the coals sigh and stir. The fire takes, but not with trust. You feed it sticks stripped of bark, their edges hissing as the flame climbs. You breathe in that scent, the sharp bite of sap, and the memory of summers you have not summoned in weeks. Nightfall seeps into your bones slowly, like ink diluted in water, coloring your senses without your consent. You feel the dampness beneath your boots, the way the ground gives slightly, and you remember the spring when the well flooded and carried away half your kitchen floor. That was a year ago, maybe 2. Time drips slower in winter months, but by now you cannot tell. You pull the door shut against the wind, and the latch creaks in protest. A door that knows your weight and how many times you've crossed it. Inside, the room is half luminous. The hearth flame casts a wan glow, rosy and hesitant, as though it too is afraid to believe night will come. You pause in the pool of light, feel the warmth press on your legs, spread in faint waves toward your chest. You shift so that one shoulder is warmed, while the other still feels the ache of the draft, an unintended demonstration of compromise. You learned early that comfort is shared only in small fractions. The goat noses around the corner, its dull silhouette framed by the hearthlight. You know that goat's breath before you see it, low and damp, like a breeze rolling off damp stone. Its bell ring, tiny and worn, shakes slightly. It seeks your presence more than warmth. You kneel, and it pushes against your side. Its fur is matted in places, coarse, with hay tangled in the curls along its back. You reach out, let your fingers drift through it, the texture gritty, like old rope. It doesn't mean to be comforting. It just is. In this twilight, every creature becomes companion. Outside, the neighbor's latch lifts softly. A silhouette pauses behind glassless windows, high, miserable things you both share. You do not speak. You never speak. Words inside the dark are too heavy. Instead, you share the lull of your presence, a quiet agreement that night has arrived, and there is no fight left in either of you. You turn back to the hearth. The flame catches in brighter pools, little tongues of amber reaching higher if you feed them. You toss on another stick, and the fire hisses, collapsing ash raining down. It smells of burnt wood and tar, mixed with the slurry of yesterday's stew turned sour. It is everything and nothing you want to breathe, and that is enough. You settle on a rough stool carved from a gnarled branch, its seat half flattened by time. You cradle your elbows on your thighs. Your hands cup, unconsciously, as if waiting for something to warm them. The goat settles at your feet, meek and persistent. The fire listens, accepting its fuel without judgment. Your breath comes and goes in the quiet, filling the room like a tide. You notice your heart's insistence, a bit too loud, you think, but the room swallows it. You watch the flicker of flame against the wooden beams overhead, the firelight touching knots in the wood like celestial bodies in miniature. Some nights you've thought you saw faces in the grain, but tonight the wood is still. Perhaps it too is tired. The flue cracks overhead, and rain begins. Not heavy, but persistent. Soft taps on the roof feel distant, like a conversation not meant for you. You lean forward to listen, to let the rhythm sink into your ears. You've memorized that sound, the way water falls into silence. You imagine the droplets, each unique, hollowing the roof boards, searching for weakness. You heard once that monks believed each raindrop carried a prayer from the sky. You are not a monk, but tonight you wonder if the rain whispers redemption. In code you are not meant to decode. You shift again, and the stool groans like a living thing. The fire shifts with you, flame dancing to its own time, sometimes reaching tall before collapsing back. You feel the crash of old memories in your joints, the winter when your father died, the tomb colder than this cocoon of warmth, the crisp air that froze your thoughts. Again and again, you felt night fold around you, but never like this. Never so quiet, so close. A soft cough drifts through the wall, low and brittle. You breathe and become it. You become the cough. You become your neighbor, confined by lack of wood and warmth and the brittle cage of old age. You wonder what color their night is, that muted gray of illness, or the blank emptiness of fever dreams. Maybe tomorrow you'll split a piece of bread with them. Maybe tonight you share nothing but this mutual hush. You haven't eaten since midday. Hunger pricks your belly like an uninvited memory. You should have ladled another serving of porridge. The watery oat sludge you ate yesterday morning had the consistency of regret, and you recall that dry bitterness squeezing corners of your mouth. But tonight, you skip it. You're too tired to even ask. The spoon sits on the edge of the table beside you, a metal thing worn smooth by generations. You stroke it once. The handle is cool. Shortcut. Hunger hums, low and steady. Yet you feel fuller than hungry, just fuller than everything else, full of dusk, full of breath, full of all that's undone and waiting in increments. You feel the tension of survival, how each night becomes a ledger, each dawn a tally. You measure life in grains consumed, embers banked, blankets shared. You close your eyes briefly, long enough to feel the chill of the stool beneath you, the draft teasing your cheek. That place by your ear feels sharp, like a fingernail scraping slowly. You wonder if the stone foundation beneath the floor breathes warmth upward. But it's a question for summer nights. Tonight, there's nothing beneath but cold, a deliberate cold, patient as stone. You open your eyes. The glare of the fire against the soot-darkened stones across the hearth flickers, ever shifting. You find yourself drawn to it, like a moth, every flicker an invitation. But you cannot thaw. You will not thaw. Instead, you breathe out, and your breath forms a small cloud of mist, rising to vanish in the swirl of smoke overhead. The goat shifts again, nudging your foot, a grounding inevitability. Your mind wants stories now, memories or fantasies. It doesn't matter which. You gather them like kindling. You think of the summer day when you held strawberries untouched by winter, juicy and bright. You think of the evening you cracked open a loaf fresh from the village oven, the steam wreathing your hands. You think of a laugh, someone's half-lost, half-remembered laugh, as comfortable as the spring breeze. You hold those fragments gently, because in the dark they must be stolen. Years ago, your mother told you night was a blanket that wrapped around you to teach you patience. You know now she was trying to keep you quiet. But maybe she was right. Maybe night shapes patience in your joints, and memory in your veins. Maybe that is what makes you human, the ability to sit and watch a flame in a silent room and still count on tomorrow. The goat stands and stretches, hooves clacking quietly. You reach for its collar, run fingers along the tarnished metal ring. The goat's breath is warmer now. You lean down, rest your head against its side. Perhaps there is comfort in its dull warmth, something more steady than the fickle flicker of flame or the restlessness of hunger. You find yourself humming a tune you learned long ago, not an anthem or prayer, just a lullaby of sorts, slow and unadorned, notes half missing. You hum it as if sorry. It is not for sleep, but for company, not for something to hold on to, but for something to let slip away. The fire is lower now, truss thinning. Still, there are red embers hidden in ash, tiny hearts of light waiting. You dip the bellows again, gentle, quiet. The coals awaken, not fully, but enough. Enough to survive the night. Some nights you wish for one of those modern miracles, something electric, steady, unchanging. But nights like this make you realize the flicker has character, that trauma and warmth share similar bones. That absence can carve space for something quieter, something like hope. The clock beyond your time, beyond your tech, ticks in sudden drips of water descending from the roof, the dripping almost metronomic. You count 4, 6, 7. You lose track. Still, the night moves, encases you, cradles you, doesn't promise rescue, only patience. When your eyes finally close completely, it is not sleep you surrender to. It is the inertia of the night, the weight of a life folded in over itself. You press your cheek to the goat's side and let the world settle. No grand release, no dawn, just the pull of tired bones toward rest. And as your breath slows, the last of the fire's sparks sink quietly, and one ember fades into ash. It takes its time, sliding deeper, until nothing remains but coal and memory. And you drift, not asleep, not dreamless, but somewhere between the two, waiting for the moment the world says you may rise again. The night has come early. Dawn will come later. No candle required, but filled with its own small light. You remain still after the ember finally surrenders, the cottage settling into a hush that's neither comforting nor complete. Your body lies half awake, half sinking into the lumpy sack of straw beneath you, and as you shift your weight, you become aware, more than you ever wanted to be, of the mattress's presence. It breathes under you, not metaphorically. It's as though the straw has gained a slow heartbeat, coils of dried grass stirring like sleeping creatures, each shaft of straw bending and cracking beneath your spine. You feel it in the small rises and falls of the surface, the tiny shifts that seem too rhythmic to be mere settling. And for a moment, you wonder if you lie on something alive. You push away the thought, but the sensation persists. Your back arches just enough to tease out a flutter of movement. You feel the straw brushing your sides, like 1,000 fine fingers grasping, adjusting, nudging you into new positions without ceremony. You cannot escape it. You cannot opt out. The sack has a will of its own, and tonight it desires a different arrangement. You shift again, hoping for stillness, but the mattress obliges with a new sigh. The goat, curled at your feet, extends a hoof toward it, as though testing the surface. You envy that simplicity. The goat doesn't question its bedding. It simply accepts discomfort, because that is all there is, and history left no alternatives. Your shoulder presses into a rough patch, raw and sharp, reminiscent of stepping on gravel in thin shoes. You lift your arm, test the straw's threshold. It resists. You lower it again. The goat shifts too, nudging your calf, offering warm weight in exchange for the mattress's stubbornness. You welcome the comfort, though it is a small grace amid the restless quilt of straw beneath and the chill of the night around you. Drafts slip in through a crack in the wood, a silent invite that brushes your cheek. You fold your sleeve over your hand to block it, but know it is futile. The walls remember every texture they have ever held. The press of your palm, the kick of your boot, the dampness of rainwater seeping through the plaster. That dampness seeps into everything, into your bones, your newspapers for tomorrow's bread, your mattress. The sack smells of yesterday's work, of goat hay, and of earth so old you can taste its memory. It's familiar, like a friend you cannot quite love. You press your face into the pillow, a thin cloth folded under a scrap of wool, and breathe in the scent of linen and sweat and something floral that you cannot name, probably borrowed from the neighbor's herb sprig stuck in the doorway. You try to imagine a mattress that's quiet and flat, modern and forgiving, but the thought feels decadent, like bathing in silk and forgetting that your skin still knows how to itch. Somewhere beyond the wall, the grumpy sibling shifts. Or maybe that's a dream. You can't tell. It matters little. Their presence is a constant ache at the edges of your awareness, a shape of companionship shaped by quiet annoyance. You hear their breath, sometimes louder than your own, and you adjust yourself again, careful not to bump their shoulder. Not because they could throw you out, but because proximity tonight is your only shared warmth. You lie there, nearly still. The mattress responds with a soft groan, as though your stillness excites it into a new configuration. Your feet sense it, the soles pressed against tufted straw, blood pooling in them in protest. You wonder if you imagined you felt something crawling, but then you feel it again. A tickle across your ankle, disappearing quickly, as though the straw itself shed a husk, left a fragment of its own shifting life against your skin. You swallow dry. You breathe. You wait. Your ribs lift the mattress slightly, and under you, it sighs again, sliding into a new posture. It does not hate you. It simply exists. And in doing so, it pushes. Your cheek begins to sting through the thin cloth. You shift again, imperceptibly. You close your eyes and press them tight, willing your skin to dull. Instead, you dream, as one does, of falling into a mattress abyss that breathes up and down like a lung. You grip the quilt, or what passes for one, a few layers of fraying wool, patched and reprieved time and again. Your knuckles whiten in the dark. Your foot snakes downward, toes searching for comfort among the hay. It finds a battered patch where the straw is flattened from use, your familiar imprint. You press into it, hoping for softness. The mattress concedes slightly, but the hardened pillow of straw beneath pushes back, reminding you that grievances can live in quiet materials too. You'd call the mattress a trickster if you believed in tricks. Instead, you call it comfortable enough and curse it in your head. You imagine yourself a traveler sleeping beneath luxurious linens, maybe sheets softened by centuries under noble butts. Those people probably didn't share mattresses with stout goats, or breathe drafts from walls built by unskilled labor. But here, in another world, you do both, and no song can bless that irony away. You roll carefully toward the middle, seeking a place between warmth from skin and cold from floor, but the mattress sighs and shifts again, reminding you this is your life, for now. You press the goat's belly as it exhales warm breath into your ankle. You feel its constant pulse there, steady and dull, as though it, unlike the mattress, remains still under the world's weight. You inhale the scent of hay mingled with its fur. It is not enough to soothe you, but it is an anchor. Your breath picks up pace, like the hearth fire when stirred, slow coaxing into life. You press your nails into the straw beneath your shoulder, leaning into the scratchy ache, allowing pain to distract fatigue. You stay on your side, because on your back the straw gathers in hollows that crick your spine. On your stomach, your neck protests. So side it is, until the mattress decides a new curve is necessary. You sigh. The goat shifts again. Time folds in this place. Minutes lengthen. Hours spread wide like spilled water. Boundaries forgotten. You listen to your own breath. One in, one out. One in, one out. The mattress breathes with you, or perhaps it echoes your breath, like a small echo chamber under your shape. Your mind drifts to yesterday's chores, milking the goat, scraping the churn, cutting brush to bank the fire. You carried hay to the attic, hay that now smells of your work, entangled in the mattress. Even the mattress tells a story. It creaks with memory. It insists on existence. You were thinking about sleep now, but the mattress has other ideas. It pitches a small mound of straw under your shoulder. You push back, and the mountain reshapes itself, an angry earth that rewrites your map. You laugh quietly to yourself. This is absurd. You feel ridiculous arguing with straw, but the night is long. The mattress is dogged. You shift weight again. The goat bleats softly, dry, hollow, and settles. Your limbs loosen. You think you might sleep soon, but then the straw shifts again. Your ribs feel each splintered vessel and the ache of muscle flexing in protest. You brave yourself against the sensation. Sleep finds you, except it finds you awkwardly, like squeezing into a too small bed. Some nights, you dream of a mat that doesn't speak. Tonight, just now, you almost believe you will find it in your dream. But when your eyelids open, you remember the mattress, warm and fragile, alive and demanding. Under the quilt, your skin pricks at every section of straw that lies just wrong. You pull the blanket higher, though it doesn't help. You curse yourself, not because you chose this mattress, but because you cling to it, like all your nights. You could float weightless above it in a linen sack or a pile of sheepskins, but that would be wrong. You wouldn't belong. The mattress sighs. You sigh. You and mattress become enmeshed, two beings divided only by a scant cloth, breathing in opposition. Your mind drifts again. Would the goat agree that mattresses were alive? You doubt it. It sleeps through storms. It sleeps through hunger. It sleeps because it has to. You wish you could sleep like that. Or so you think, until the mattress remembers you're lying above it and nudges awake the shivers in your spine. You press your palm flat on the straw, head numb and dizzy. You try to still your breath. The mattress rubs against you in new ways. It molds. It nudges. You wince. You press back. The goat shifts. Time becomes a river of straw, endless and wet. There is no downstream. There is no shore. You grin tiredly in the dark. You almost wish the mattress would let go of its will. But then who would guide you in this silent negotiation? You sigh again, and this time, the straw deep beneath you shifts subtly, bidding you into peace. You feel the mattress flatten into a small trough at your waist. You feel the goat's breath steady. You feel the walls exhale, the fire's memory on the hearth, the last heat coiling in your spine. You allow your limbs to soften. You doze, but the mattress remembers. It rises up slightly beneath your head, pressing against your ear. You stir again. You find yourself upright again, but you stay. You lean into the mattress's shape, into the goat's warmth, into the dim glow that still lingers at the threshold of night. You press your cheek to the wool and inhale deeply. Straw, goat, mattress, all become one. You exhale. Maybe tomorrow you'll remember to add fresh straw. Maybe the neighbor will lend you a patch of blanket. Maybe you'll look for better bedding. But not tonight. Tonight, you lie surrendered to the living, breathing mattress beneath you, finding in its stubborn shifts the first rough lullaby of sleep. When you rouse in the deep of the night again, you'll remember this quilt of straw and quiet resistance, and you'll realize it's time to embrace the pigsty of your rest, as impossible as that sounds. Until then, drift. Tonight, your shoulder presses against something warm and unpredictable before you fully notice, an uninvited, familiar weight shifting beneath the cloth that both comforts and irritates. It is the goat, as it always is. It is both gift and curse, companion and burden. your nocturnal roommate whose presence you cannot escape even when you close your mind to it. You breathe in its scent, hay, dust, a faint tang of something sweet in the goat's breath, and acknowledge that in this cottage, in this season, the goat is not optional. The night presses close, tighter than the walls themselves. You lie on your straw mattress, alive, shifting, creaking at every move. Yet your attention centers on the goat's flank, rising and falling with each breath of the animal. Its ribcage flexes like a bellows, warm air pooling around your side. You welcome that warmth even as you resent its wetness, the sticky trade-off of comfort. You imagine modern life, a world far beyond this hearth where goats do not share beds and warmth comes through bricks and machinery instead of living weight. That life seems distant, foreign, as though someone else is living it. You shift your arm to rest against its fur. Your fingertips meet a knot of coarse hair. The texture reminds you of rope used to lash hay bales, rough and enduring. Your thumb brushes the goat's side, hoping for reassurance, but all you get is the steady pulse beneath the fur. Equal parts comfort and reminder that you are here, awake, tethered to this living, breathing creature. You wiggle, seeking a less suffocating angle, but the goat inflates against you, claiming your space as surely as the night has claimed the room. The quilt between you and the goat is thin, patchwork made of worn wool and second-hand cloth cut from old tunics. It is not much barrier, but it's something. You press your cheek against it, inhale again. The walls, stucco over wattle, sigh in response to the night's breeze. They breathe moisture, a damp chill seeping through, fogging the air just enough to make you pause. The goat shifts again, releasing warmth that meets that draft. Steam rises between you, breathing and counter-breathing, a quiet dance of temperatures. You can almost feel the moisture settling against your ribs, slow and insistent. You hold your breath, waiting for it to subside, but instead you feel the prick of damp skin against your back and side. Sometimes you think you are breathing wetness, like bathing in slow fog. Goat, you think. You're lucky it isn't a wet rat. You press deeper into the layers beneath you. Your quilt, the matted goat fur, the living mattress, the splintered wood beneath it. Each layer holds a story of comfort and failure, of nights scraped raw and slow recoveries. You imagine sheets, modern things so crisp you could mistake them for the sky on a cold day. But tonight, you are bound to the goat, and to the quilt full of holes that never stays full for long. Your shoulder aches, they all do by now, but tonight it throbs in protest. It reminds you that you are not sleeping on cotton or foam or convenience. You are sleeping on survival, rested only by degrees. You shift again, and the mattress groans those small mocking creaks like a ship sailing on windless seas. You press your hand into the quilt to steady yourself, but the goat nudges against you, offers a warm rock when you need solidity most. You sigh and release. Time in this room is a slow crawl of breathing bellows and shifting masses. You count the goat's inhales, a silent life whose rhythm you've memorized. Your breath sinks to it, a tiny concession to the night's tyranny. You inhale with the goat, exhale alone. You inhale again, but no one inhales with you now. Just goat and mattress, and the draft eating through the cotter pin of the window. The quilt shifts beneath your hand. You feel something rough, too rigid to be goat hair or cloth. You trace it with a finger, discovering a fragment of wicker, perhaps from last summer's basket that fell apart in storage. You hold the small splinter in your palm, let its edges press into your skin. It feels absurdly comforting. You press harder and feel the grain bite in. Bitter inspiration, weaving new discomfort into old numbness. You push back, but the goat negotiates its weight atop you again, shifting pressure. You inhale wet hay air and wonder if your shoulder will remember this sleep when you rise. The sibling beneath the other quilt shifts, and their movement nudges the mattress beneath you. You feel the world stir. The mattress reminds you again of its living nature. Dry straw moving under layers of body weight, goat, quilt. Its size under displaced weight invites readjustment. You roll carefully, shifting your hips, but knowing full well the straw will assert itself elsewhere. The goat shifts to maintain its own comfort and peace treaties at 3 a.m. You feel its short horns press through the quilt, like small anchors. Your cheek burns from pressing against scratchy wool. You press your other cheek against the goat's side instead, seeking plushness. But its ribs are hard, unyielding. Your cheek finds the edge of a knot, tufted straw poking through the mattress patching. You curse it mentally and drift, sinking eyelids over heavy lids. You inhale, feel the goat's breath warm your ear, and almost drift fully. But the draft returns, a rush of cold that presses into your back, where goat and mattress cannot defend you. No one warned you that drafts can creep their way through laths in winter, that clothes wrinkle and shift, exposing your skin to the cold's climb. You hold your breath again. Your lungs ache. You consider pulling the quilt higher, but the goat's weight prevents you. You feel your limbs press, buried under living heat and straw weight. You wonder why anyone would choose this life. But then you remember that choices are luxuries. You wonder how the wealthy sleep, cushioned by down and turkey's feathers or velvet, terms you've heard murmured by the nosy neighbor who once bragged about such things. You imagine it, sinking into softness, never waking to shifting lumps or rattling straw or goat's weight on your ribs. It's a miracle so far removed, it might as well be a fairy tale. In your mind, you walk through the hypothetical mansion of that neighbor. Drapes pull closed at dusk, faint flicker of candles illuminating soft walls. You imagine silk sheets cooling as your body sinks, then rises, then sinks again in perfect rhythm. But that imagining aches like salt on a wound. It reminds you of what you lack. You clamp it down. You clamp it so tightly that even the night's creeping dread cannot slip in. Your cheek still touches the goat's flank, its coarse fur like corn silk tangled in your fingers. You try to smooth it, but it doesn't give. Instead, you press closer, partly seeking comfort, partly yielding to fatigue. You inhale again, slowly. The mattress groans once. You flinch. You imagine that groan carries memory of births and deaths and chores and gatherings and prayers, layers of living compressed into straw, clay, goat fur beneath you. Your breathing starts to slow. You count breaths now instead of the goat's. 1 in, 1 out. You weave your breath into the mattress's creak. You breathe into the quilt to warm it. You feel its thinness. 2 coats maybe, patched long ago. You recall the neighbor once offered an extra blanket, just 1 small mammal skin doubled over. You declined. It felt like charity disguised as charity. You carry the quilt tonight. It holds you. Your mind drifts to sheepdogs barking in the night beyond your window. You hear the echo through walls, rattling small things. A metal spoon clings against a saucepan in the next room, reminder of morning chores waiting. You wince at the promise. You press deeper into the goat's chest, seeking reassurance that tomorrow isn't thin with misery. Instead, you feel its heartbeat again, slow and sure. You exhale and feel something shift. And suddenly, the goat has risen, lifting its head, stretching its legs. You nearly cry, but instead you slide back as it pushes off, its body sliding away, leaving you exposed. The draft slaps into your side. You gasp and roll onto your other shoulder. The mattress protests. The quilt wriggles free. The goat stands, bristles lit by the faint firelight. It shakes itself once, dislodging stray hay and dust. A silent statement. I sleep elsewhere for now. You lie in the dimple left behind, a shallow crater of warmth and fur. You press your palms flat, testing the hardness of the straw beneath. It's worse, scratchier than before. It remembers the goat's shape now and won't let go. You inhale the silence. The goat's breath is gone. Its heat is gone. You are suddenly small and cold in the dark. The draft intensifies, pushing through the wall crack as though it senses your vulnerability. You press the quilt over your shoulder, tug it close around your chest and waist, hugging yourself into warmth. The mattress shifts again beneath your ribs, as if mocking your solitude. You almost laugh. Dry humor surfaces like a reflex. You laugh. You, alone, trapped in bed by a mattress and a goat, warmed only by reluctant humor and thin cloth. Your belly pinches, hunger or chill, you cannot tell. Your mouth tastes stale, like yesterday's stew, like an echo memory of food. You imagine you can almost taste porridge, oats swollen in water thicker than regret. You almost sniff honey's sweetness in the dark. But the porridge is gone. The oats turned sour. The honey ended days ago. You do not dream of feast, not even scraps. You dream only of warmth and mattress stillness. Your breathing slows. The chill creeps in like sediment, deeper into your ribs. You stiffen. You shift. The mattress sighs again. You lift your head slightly, eyes adjusting to emptiness. The fire in the hearth is nothing more than coals buried under ash. No warmth radiates. No promise spills. You lie down again, pressing the quilt under your cheek as a pillow. Your cheek meets rough cloth and straw, and despite everything, your body yields. You close your eyes. You breathe slowly, measured. The mattress's living pulse still hums somewhere under you. The cottage breathes around you, walls creaking, fire sighing, night hanging heavy. Your cockles of awareness dull. The memory of goat weight lingers, solid, anchored, finally faded. You feel yourself sink, just enough. The hush becomes a lullaby. The quilt holds enough warmth, borrowed from the day's sun, the goat's passages, the scattered coals. Your chest softens. The draft is still there, but smaller. The mattress still moves, but less insistently. The absence of goat's weight leaves a cool but welcome stillness. And you drift, somewhere between discomfort and rest, between awareness and oblivion, between worlds where mattresses breathe and where gentler sheets exist, far above your humble cottage. Sleep accepts you, unsentimental and slow, as the mattress sighs and stills beneath your shape, and you sink deeper. Waiting for the dawn, you have no luxury to fear. Your night continues beyond this moment of surrender. In the hush before dawn, new sensations will shape you again. But for now, you sleep. You lie still in the dim glow of embers, the mattress beneath you settling against your weight, and somewhere a rat scrapes at the stone floor. Tiny rhythms marking time in this world that offers no clocks. The breath that moves through your body tonight is not yours alone. It is part of the cottage's fragile heartbeat, the only pulse you have to heat its bones. You are the heating system, in more ways than sinfully humorous. Your toes press against the wool blanket, thin, patched, fraying once more, seeking warmth. The air is an uninvited chill, creeping through the seams in the walls and stealing across your skin, leaving gooseflesh in its wake. You press your knees together, wrapping your legs around one another, torso tightening, trying to generate enough friction to resist the cold. You can almost feel your body wringing itself out for heat. It is cold enough that even your bones seem to shrink, retreat. You cannot let them. The fire that once danced in the hearth is now only memory. Embers that glow faintly beneath black ash. Pockets of residual warmth that might have been enough to toast bread if you were so lucky. But bread is not coming tonight. The coals are your inheritance, and you guard them like a mother hen guarding eggs. They sputter once, as though testing your commitment, and you shift to blow lightly, gentle, careful, wishing you had bellows that didn't leak. Instead, you breathe into the coals, your breath a ghost of warmth, and hope it persuades them to linger. Your back aches, a dull compression that spreads down shoulders and across the spine. You remember days when your body could endure more, carry hay bales, chase goats stray from the barn. But tonight, it endures differently. It holds heat. It accumulates friction. You rest your hand on your ribs and feel the slow, insistent hum of blood, that inner furnace thrumming in defiance of the cold. You breathe slower, deeper, focusing on the rising warmth around your heart. You are a heater, an engine fueled by hopes and chores, and the unspoken pressure of others' breath melding into yours. You shift ever so slightly, and the goat nestled at your side lifts its head. Its warm weight against your thigh is something stubbornly welcome. You press them together, skin to fur, sharing every sliver of body heat. You can feel the goat's muscles moving beneath its coat as it settles once more, its warmth seeping into your night. You press more, making up for the coal's loss with living presence, trading goat trust for human comfort. On the far side of the bed, your sibling lies under their quilt, breathing in patterns distant enough to mimic sleep. You press the quilt down before lying here, carving a small corner of its warmth for yourself. The sibling's arm is broad, thick with muscle and unspoken resilience. Heat trades silently under those covers, spreading outward like slow kindness. Your quilt is a poor substitute for insulation, a couple of layers at best. You wonder if people in faraway places have fabrics thicker than a goat's pelt, woven fine and soft and resistant to cold. But here, you press into what you have: your body, the goat, and the quilt askew. You inhale again, drawing in the scent of hearth smoke, of goat hay, of straw bedding, and the faint trace of stale porridge sweetened with nothing. Every breath carries warmth if you coax it gently. Time stretches now. Minutes not counted by anything except the goat's breathing and the embers flicker. You listen to your own chest, your lungs expanding, contracting, each breath deliberate. You are a breathing machine, a pulsing resistor against cold. You feel the low hum of heat moving up your spine, radiating outward. This is your role. You are the hearth. Without fire or stone, without bricks or wool, your body becomes the system that holds back winter's bite. Shift again, and the mattress groans beneath you. Every creak reminds you that the cottage has no proper central heating, no clever chimney, no shining hearthstone glowing hot from stones. Just embers half dead and people circulating them like offerings. You stand, almost, and shuffle to blow the coals again, but decide against it. That movement might be wasted energy, wasted warmth. Instead, you press closer to the goat, feeling its heat rise through straw, through quilt, through your limbs. Each contact point is a junction in your improvised radiator. The draft hits again, cold tendrils whispering across your ribs, pushing through the cracks in the wattle. You flex your muscles to press your back into the mattress, sealing the space your skin leaves behind. You feel the bones in your back dig into your flesh, reminding you that nothing is cushiony. You grip the quilt with both hands, pulling it upward. It stops an inch below your chin. In modern houses, you'd now be surrounded by insulation and sealed windows. Here, you make do with human quilts and goat body warmth. Your forehead hums with chill, eyelids heavy. You try to imagine a blanket so thick it could hug you silent against the night, but the thought feels like a sin, too luxurious for someone whose heating is a goat, an ember, and two aching lungs. Guilt pricks you. How easy warmth could slip away from you, unbidden, into houses without goats, without embers. But that's not your world. You inhale and accept that you are enough. The goat shifts once again, stretching out a hoof that presses against your thigh. You nudge back, offering more warmth. The goat nuzzles into the quilt. You sense its contentment and feel your chest lighten. You smile, commiserating in warmth. It comforts you in its animal way, its dull trust reminding you that heat, like kindness, sometimes doesn't need articulation. You breathe in the quilt again. You let yourself feel the porous heat, the residual swirl of yesterday's chores, the memory of midday sun compressed into your skin, the slow gathering of warmth around your midsection. You hold on to it, willing it to ground you. The night feels less empty, less vast. It shrinks to the edges of your blankets, to the slump of your shoulders, to the press of your ribs. Minutes pass. The hearth's coals sputter low, but still warm. You move again, tiny adjustment. Just enough. The goat breathes through its nose. You feel the warm exhale brushing your ribs. You imagine modern heaters clicking on, radiators humming softly, and then force yourself to stop imagining. You are here. You are not modern, but you are alive. You are warm enough to sleep. You inhale slow. Exhale longer. You feel the heat pulsing at your back, at the core of your chest. You feel the goat's warmth radiating through your blanket. You feel your siblings' quasi-heat floating into your corner. The mattress holds. You feel your body imprint it, hold it. You drift now. Your role as heating system morphs into something more than necessity. It becomes communion, the living warmth shared. You realize that in the frostiest weeks, people became accustomed to immediate closeness, that the goat's warmth, the quilt, the breath, they are the only coal you know. You soften. You let sleep pool around you. You're still alive, still breathing, still keeping the cold at bay. The ember glows one final breath and flickers dark. The goat's breathing hums louder. Your quilt molds to your chest. You exhale and drift, warm in tired surrender. As you shift deeper into dream, the room feels smaller, warmer, the cold pressing out at the edges. You will wake again before dawn, in need of more heat to feed the fire, or to stoke your own body into life. But for now, you are the fire, and that is enough. You will carry this night's warmth into tomorrow's cold dawn, where the embers will still wait, and you will still be the hearth. The fire has long since gone out, but your body is still trying to pretend it hasn't noticed. The last coals faded beneath a mound of ash hours ago, but in your half-sleeping mind, there's still a memory of warmth, dim and fragile, like the final glow of a candle someone forgot to snuff out. You don't open your eyes. You don't move. You just shift the cloth wrapped around your neck a little higher, trying to cover the part of your cheek that feels like it might crack off and slide into the straw. There is no such thing as undressing for bed. Not here. Not ever. Clothes are not garments. They are armor, layers upon layers of rough wool, linen, hand-me-downs stiff with old sweat and last week's turnip stew. You sleep in them because taking them off would be unthinkable. That kind of luxury belongs to carved statues and distant lords, people with private chambers and servants to stoke the brazier. You, on the other hand, sleep in the same clothes you hauled firewood in, cleaned muck from a pig's rear in, argued over dry bread in, and occasionally, if you're lucky, wept privately into. The wool scratches at your neck like a persistent bramble, the same tunic you've worn for 3 days, or was it 4, clings to your shoulders, still damp from your own breath and the mist that somehow seeped in through the thatch roof. The undertunic has bunched up along your ribs, and no matter how many times you twist or shimmy, it refuses to lie flat. Somewhere in the folds, a straw splinter has embedded itself in your side, and you've made peace with the idea that it's now part of you. There was a time when you tried to sleep in just a smock. Just once. A particularly warm summer night, when the air had the decency not to bite. You remember slipping out of your day clothes, feeling almost daring, as if you were one layer closer to something decadent. It lasted until the rats realized you weren't covered properly. One scratch across the calf was enough to convince you that wool, no matter how damp or itchy, was still better than exposed skin in a room shared with creatures that gnaw. You tug at the cloth wrapping your legs. They used to be part of an old cloak before it tore down the middle and was repurposed into leg binders. The fabric is heavy, smells like mildew, and one side still carries a faint crust from the time someone spilled barley mash on it. But it's thick. It holds warmth, even if that warmth is mostly your own stale breath trapped in a wool cocoon. Beside you, the sibling you're not speaking to anymore exhales with theatrical misery. You can't tell if it's because of the straw poking them in the back, or if your elbow has drifted over the invisible line that divides your half of the shared bedding. You refuse to check. It's not worth the war. There are no true beds here, just flattened piles of straw you both pretend have boundaries. The clothes you're wrapped in are the only real borders you know. The cloth on your arms is stiff in the elbows, where repeated wear and washing, which is to say, being beaten against a stone in freezing stream water every month or so, has made the wool behave more like boiled bark. Every bend is a negotiation. You shift carefully. Movement is noise, and noise wakes people, and people waking leads to questions, and questions lead to tasks. You're not dressed for tasks. You're barely dressed for existence. A draft moves under the door like a crawling thing. It snakes across the floor, slithering under your layers, curling around your knees, lifting the edges of your garments as if to remind you that no matter how many layers you wear, the night will always find a way in. You try curling tighter. It helps in the way wrapping yourself in old parchment might help, which is to say, not at all, but it feels like an attempt at control. You think about how many layers you're wearing now. There's the shirt. You're only one with a neckline still mostly intact. Over that, the sleeveless tunic, whose hem you tore when it caught on a pig's pen latch, now hanging at a diagonal like a badly tuned sail. Then there's the overdress, or jerkin, if you're lucky enough to have one. Yours used to belong to your grandmother, which means it's roughly the size of a potato sack and smells of linseed oil and melancholy. Add the leg wraps, the patched hose, and the cloak fragments you use to cover your feet. And still, you feel like you are only ever one forgotten thread away from freezing. There are moments when the itch of the seams and the smell of your own collar become too much, that you imagine what it might be like to sleep in something soft, something clean, something designed for sleep and not survival. But then you remember the mice, the lice, the wind, and the goat, who wanders freely and sometimes stares directly into your soul as you drift into half-sleep, judging your every decision. Clothes are not a costume. They are your insulation, your defense, your bedmate, your burden, the part of you that never gets to rest. The more you sweat into them, the more they stiffen. The more they stiffen, the less they breathe. You are slowly entombing yourself in a personal sarcophagus made of wool and sweat and hay. It is not glamorous. It is not noble. But it is better than dying of exposure in your sleep. The weight of the clothing is part of your sleep now, like a stone pressing you into the straw. It's the only blanket you'll ever have. Every layer is a compromise between suffocation and shivering. You shift again, just enough to give your right hip some relief, and the linen wrap around your waist rides up to expose the small of your back to the air. You hiss inwardly and try to tuck it back without disturbing the entire cocoon. It doesn't work. The air finds you anyway. Someone across the room coughs, that wet, familiar bark of someone who hasn't seen a warm bath in a season and has accepted that they never will. You pull your tunic tighter. The cough doesn't wake anyone, not fully, but it ripples across the straw piles. Someone groans, someone mutters, someone somewhere shifts, and the long wooden wall creaks like it's sighing at your shared misfortune. The floor beneath you is cold through the straw. You can feel it pressing up, greedy for heat. That's why the straw has to stay dry. Wet straw doesn't insulate. It just welcomes in the cold, the mold, and the crawling things. You remember last winter, when someone spilled broth too close to the bedroll and didn't tell anyone. It soaked through like poison and left a damp crater that took days to dry. And even then, the smell never really left. Neither did the lice. You sigh, but only into your collar. You've learned to keep your breath where it belongs, close to your skin. Letting it escape is a waste. The air is not interested in helping you. The air wants what little warmth you still carry. You grip your elbows with stiff hands and curl in tighter. Somewhere near the hearth, what's left of it, a rat stirs. You hear the rustle of hay shifting, a squeak, a scurry. You don't move. You've learned not to flinch. Flinching invites attention. Attention invites conversation. Conversation leads to responsibilities. You are in your nighttime clothes, which is to say, your all-the-time clothes. You are not prepared to speak, or move, or be anything other than barely conscious and heavily bundled. The air smells of smoke, sour wool, damp wood, and something vaguely fungal. You suppose this is what comfort smells like when you don't know better. You bury your face in your sleeve and drift, not quite asleep, not quite awake, feeling the layers press in tighter around you. Clothes are pajamas now. They are everything now. And as the first faint light of false dawn creeps through the slats in the wall, cold and gray and accusatory, you realize they will still be on you when morning arrives, soaked in sleep and stiff with the shape of your limbs, just like yesterday, just like tomorrow. And somewhere in the quiet, a chicken begins to stir, right on cue, as the first hint of chores begins to loom just beyond the horizon. But for now, you don't move. You lie there in the woolen coffin of your waking dreams, listening to the rustle of straw and the goat's familiar chewing behind the door. And you wait for the next discomfort to begin. The silence deepens, not because the world has gone quiet, but because everything left that can make a sound has already surrendered to the dark. You're lying beneath layers that once belonged to a tunic, or a sack, or perhaps a bit of both. Your memories of what they were have faded, much like their seams. The goat has shifted, again. Her warmth is welcome, her smell less so, but in the grand balance of things, and by things you mean frostbite, it's a price you pay with only a mild grudge. She's close enough now that her exhale curls around your face like a question you can't answer. Warm, wet, and vaguely judgmental. That's the best part of the night. There's a crust of ice on the bucket near the door, and if you listen very carefully, you can hear it crack as the air tightens its grip. The wind outside slides its fingers between the boards again, whistling low like it's trying not to wake the children. Or maybe like it's mocking you, softly, endlessly. It always seems to know when you're on the verge of sleep. Not proper sleep, mind you, but that heavy kind where thoughts turn into soup and time loses its shape. That's the moment it presses in. A long, moaning draft across your ankles. An invisible spoon stirring the broth of your dreams. You shift slightly, and everything beneath you responds with a crunch. The straw has frozen. Again. You've developed an instinct for the temperature of straw, a skill no one asks for, no one teaches, and no one congratulates you for. But you know it. When it creaks like old bread, you're fine. When it crunches like beetles underfoot, you're in trouble. Tonight, it's the latter. You can feel the outline of a twig through the thin linen between your shoulder blades. You thought you'd gotten it out. You hadn't. You never do. Sleep comes not like a wave, but like fog creeping along a bog. Slow, damp, and full of smells that should not be named. You try to let yourself go, to fall into that space where time forgets to move forward. But your body remembers everything. It remembers the sore on your heel, the twitch in your back, the way your stomach tucked in on itself hours ago in a polite but insistent protest. You tried chewing that root again before bed. It didn't help. It never does. It just made your jaw hurt and your breath more interesting to the goat. Your sister mumbles something across the room. Nothing intelligible, just a breathy shuffle of vowels that sound like she's arguing with her dreams. Probably about food. Probably winning. She kicks once and settles again, the straw shifting in a language of its own. You envy her. She's always been good at sleeping through the misery. Or maybe she's just given up fighting it. You haven't. Not yet. You still try to warm your fingers before tucking them in. You still roll your shoulders to keep blood moving. You still curse, quietly, inwardly, reverently, when a rat noses across your hip on its way to nowhere. You do not scream. You do not swat. You simply sigh and wait for the weight of it to pass. It always does. And besides, you've learned to pretend that it's not a rat. It's easier that way. The dreams you find here are not luxurious. They are not flights of fancy, nor visions of heaven. They are mostly memories with the edges frayed, stitched loosely together with whatever scraps your brain has left to offer. You dream of warmth sometimes. Not fire, not sun. Just warmth as a concept. A vague impression of not shivering. Of standing in a place where your breath does not curl like smoke from your lips. You dream of full bellies, of wool that doesn't itch, of bread that doesn't crack like stone when you bite it. These things live in your mind like ghosts, visiting when the cold lets its grip go slack for a moment. Other times, your dreams are less kind. You see work that hasn't yet come. You see faces that don't smile. You relive mornings before they arrive, mornings with frost clinging to the edge of the water pail, and clothes that never fully dried from the day before. You dream of waking, and then you do. But you're not sure when the dream ended and the waking began. The difference is mostly academic when your nose is cold and your toes feel like borrowed stones from the riverbed. You've taken to sleeping curled tightly now, knees pressed up, arms folded like you're holding on to yourself. Because in a way, you are. There's nothing else to hold. And the body, if you listen to it, begins to understand that this posture is less about comfort and more about strategy. Like an animal that curls beneath leaves, you try to make your shape small enough that the night cannot see you, or cannot be bothered. The hearth, what remains of it, is a distant memory. The coals are cold, the ash damp with breath and settling dust. No one relights it once the family lies down. Fuel is precious, and mornings are long. You're meant to survive the night, not enjoy it. If someone wakes in a sweat, that's unusual. If someone doesn't wake at all, that's more common than anyone will admit out loud. You've tried counting before, just to pass the time. Not sheep. There are no sheep in this house. Not inside. But you've counted creaks in the wall. You've counted the spaces between wind gusts. You've counted the scurrying steps of the mouse that lives near the grain sack. Sometimes you reach 30 before sleep tugs you under. Sometimes you count well into the hundreds and still feel the night stretch out in front of you, like a road no one wants to travel. The children whimper in their sleep sometimes. You don't move. You just listen. There's comfort in it. Not in their discomfort, but in their presence. In knowing someone else is here, also losing to the cold in slow, even breaths. You imagine the old ones on the far side of the room, curled like forgotten spoons, their bones groaning even in dreams. You wonder what they see when they sleep, if they see the past, or if their minds have learned to turn away from it altogether. There is no true silence here, only a layering of soft disturbances, the brush of fabric, the hush of breath, the occasional cough muffled beneath a blanket, and beneath it all, the cold, always the cold, not loud, not aggressive, just patient, persistent, present. You sleep in it the way a fish sleeps in water, not entirely separate from it, just floating, numbed, made part of it. And when you do slip away, truly away, it isn't like flying. It's like sinking. Your thoughts scatter, and your skin gives up complaining. Your body, for once, ceases its argument with the air. You are not warm. but you are no longer aware of being cold. That's the best you can hope for. That's the most sleep offers here. A brief forgetting. You do not dream of fire anymore. That luxury has dimmed. Now you dream of heavy cloth, of stale hay without frost, of socks maybe. A ridiculous notion, but it comes sometimes, and you hold it close, like a secret, even after you've forgotten the dream. Outside, the wind does what it always does. It moves and it waits. It stirs the thatch and rustles the lean-tos. It caresses the walls like an old, disapproving friend. And inside, you lie still. You do not chase sleep. You let it find you when it will. Like the goat, like the morning. Somewhere in the dark, someone mutters. Somewhere else, the straw shifts again. The fire may be out, but the night is not done. And as you drift, slow and aching, into a place where dreams curl like smoke and hunger forgets to gnaw for a time, you feel the edge of another discomfort arriving, one that smells faintly of onions, sweat, and damp wool. It lingers from the night before, a faint, acrid warning in the still air. Somewhere in the shadows near your feet, beneath the tangle of scratchy wool and weary limbs, sits the problem that no one wishes to name aloud. It hums with a quiet menace, a sour warmth that cuts through the bitter cold like a whispered insult. You shift slightly, careful not to jostle the wrong blanket or nudge your sibling, who snorts in his sleep like a man choking on boiled turnips. You hadn't meant to think about the chamber pot, but now that you have, it's impossible not to feel its presence, like a judgmental ant crouched silently in the dark, daring you to forget she's there. Somewhere to your right, the goat sighs in its sleep, content with its own internal affairs, not bothered in the least by the shared indignity of this arrangement. The pot is not decorative. It is not quaint. It is not, as the nobles might say, an object of convenience. It is a communal pact of resignation. You all pretend to forget about it during the day, but when night falls and the latrine is a frozen swamp of regret and bramble, the chamber pot becomes the compromise, the necessary evil, the stinking centerpiece of your midnight domestic rituals. Your body stirs with the familiar ache of hesitation. The cold has made your knees stiff, your back sore, and your bladder uncertain. You could hold it. You always try. You tell yourself the sun can't be too far off, that perhaps the warmth of sleep might wrap around you again. But your thoughts keep returning to the pot, to its chipped rim, to its sloshing secrets, to the sheer mathematical unfairness of having one object shared by 6 people, 2 of whom drink cabbage broth like it's a competitive sport. You reach slowly under the blanket, careful not to disturb the sleeping forms around you. Fingers numb, joints slow, you grope in the dark like someone searching for dignity in a haystack. And there it is, cold, damp, a little too close to someone's foot for comfort. You gently pull it toward you, the contents shifting with an audible reminder of everyone's previous regrets. There is no privacy. You do not delude yourself. The rustle of fabric, the groan of movement, the quiet thud of ceramic against packed dirt, all of it announces your moment. Even if no one stirs, you know they know. And they know you know. It's the nightly ritual of shame, a performance of silence, a kind of intimacy that only poverty can justify. You try not to look down. Not that there's anything to see in the dark. But still, the imagination is crueler than sight. You've learned to do this with as little thought as possible. A clumsy ballet, balancing discomfort and disgust, all while squatting like a sad forest creature that's lost its way. There's no toilet paper. Of course not. Just a bit of rough cloth someone left nearby, stiff with cold and fate. When you're done, you slide the pot back toward its spot with reverence. Or perhaps it's just fear. One careless tip, one bump from a dream-wild leg, and everything becomes a problem. A loud, wet, waking problem that no one will ever forgive you for. Last winter, your cousin did just that. and no one speaks to him the same way anymore. You tuck yourself back under the blanket, trying to forget. But the air remembers. The scent drifts upward, warmed by the collective breath of sleepers and livestock. You bury your face into your tunic, already crusted with yesterday's sweat. But at least it's your sweat. There is no escape. Not really. Not until someone builds a better system. And no one around here has the time, the money, or the optimism for plumbing. So you lie there, your limbs folded in a shape no adult should tolerate, your thoughts fogged by fatigue and faint nausea. You wonder if this is what adulthood was always meant to be. Cold, smelly, and vaguely disappointed. Your sister mumbles in her sleep, perhaps dreaming of something warmer, cleaner, more merciful. Or perhaps she's just processing the same betrayal of cabbage stew that brought you to this point. The fire has nearly died, offering nothing but a distant glow and a thin thread of smoke that wanders across the ceiling like a lost soul. You can't risk getting up to bank it again, not with the pot so freshly offended. Besides, the thought of touching damp ash with bare hands again feels like a punishment you haven't earned tonight. Your foot brushes against straw, not the good kind. Not that any kind is good, but the pokey, slightly moldy stuff that's managed to find its way into your bedding again. You pick it out absently, like grooming yourself for a better life that never arrives. Eventually, your breathing slows again. The discomfort settles into the background, not gone, but muted. Like everything else, there's always a faint sense of waiting here, for warmth, for sunrise, for a change that never comes. Even your dreams are modest now. You don't ask for joy, just a night without smell, a morning without frost in your nostrils. Somewhere in the far corner, a rat scurries behind the wall. Perhaps he too regrets where he lives. Perhaps he thinks of greener fields and unguarded cheese. Or perhaps he's simply braver than you, venturing out in the night while you lie in bed, hoping the pot doesn't shift or spill or make itself known again before dawn. Sleep comes slow, but it comes. Eventually, the cold becomes a weight you forget how to carry. The air smells less like memory and more like surrender. The night folds around you like rough wool, scratchy, heavy, familiar. And just before your thoughts drift entirely away, you remember the worst part. It will be full by morning, and someone will have to empty it. That someone might be you. But that is a problem for tomorrow's self. The person you'll become once the frost bites your toes and the goat sits on your chest again. For now, you exhale through your nose, dry and slow, letting the smell fade into background, letting your limbs forget they were ever awake. Beyond the walls, the wind stirs gently, and the straw crackles beneath you with a tired sigh, a sound that carries you slowly into the next long, uncomfortable hour of rest. The evening settles in with a wet sigh, not the gentle hush of a misty drizzle, but the kind of rain that falls like it's been personally offended by your existence. It slaps against the roof in uneven bursts, relentless and angry, like someone upstairs has been stomping around in a sour mood for the last 3 centuries. The sound is oddly musical, in the way a pot lid clanging against your ear might be, and underneath it all, a smaller, quieter rhythm, the slow, inevitable drip, drip, drip of water leaking somewhere above your head. You try to ignore it at first. That's the first mistake. The second mistake is assuming the leak won't move. You lie motionless, clutching your ragged woolen cloak tighter around your shoulders, willing the drafty air to show mercy. It doesn't. The cloak smells faintly of old lard and wet dog, which is to say, comfortingly familiar. But there's a cool dampness spreading beneath your hip, and you know exactly what that means. The roof has betrayed you again. It always begins the same way. A small darkened spot. A single drop that falls so slowly you question whether it happened at all. Then another. And then a trickle. And then, eventually, a symphony of slow torture. The plink of water against clay, then against wood, then against skin. You've become something of an expert in leak classification. There's the gentle tickle down the wall, manageable. The splash into a bowl someone forgot to empty, tolerable. And the worst of them all, the slow soak of straw beneath your sleeping body, turning your already questionably clean bedding into something resembling a rotting salad. You shift your weight to the left. The moisture follows. A chill creeps up your spine like a slug wearing a crown, confident and slow. The mattress, if you can still call it that, is already a mess of musty stuffing, flattened burlap, and the occasional twig that pokes you in the ribs like a judgmental ancestor. When dry, it's merely uncomfortable. When wet, it becomes a slow sponge of sorrow. The sort of thing you wouldn't let a pig sleep on. Not out of compassion, but because pigs are more valuable than you. And so the great migration begins. Not a dramatic shift, not even a full lift of the body, just the tiniest scoot. A subtle, exhausted slide to the edge of the leak. You've mastered this motion in the dark, without stirring the rest of the household. Because once you wake someone else, a sibling, a parent, the neighbor who mysteriously sleeps in your corner now, you'll be blamed for their discomfort too. It's your fault the ceiling leaks. Your fault the straw smells like a compost heap. Your fault the dog tracked in mud. Again. You scoot. The leak follows. Of course it does. Because this roof, like the rest of the longhouse, was built by a combination of guesswork, desperation, and twine. You've tried to patch it before. A wad of wool here, a clay smear there. But the rain always finds a way. It's clever like that. Water doesn't care about your plans. It just wants in. There's no room to move the mattress entirely. Not when every corner of the room is already occupied with bodies, baskets, goats, and the ever-present scent of turnips that have been stored just slightly too long. So you rotate your body like a sunbathing lizard, trying to find a warm patch that no longer exists. One arm outstretched, one foot curled under the edge of the fabric, a position that might be called comfortable in the same way a wooden spoon might be called musical. Someone coughs. Not you. Not directly next to you, but close enough that you can feel the exhale drift over your feet like a sour wind. You're not sure who it is. That's the problem with sharing a sleeping space with 7 people and a goat. You lose track. You begin to know people more by smell and foot placement than by name. Another drip lands. Not on you, this time. On the floor, near the hearth. You count yourself lucky. The hearth is no longer warm, of course. The fire was banked hours ago. But at least it's dry. Mostly. For now. Maybe. You think of moving your whole bedding setup over there, near the ash and ember remnants. But that would require standing up. And standing up would require stepping barefoot onto the cold, damp floorboards. And the last time you did that, something bit you. You never found out what. It might have been a flea. It might have been your sibling. The boundary between wildlife and family is porous in this place. So you stay. You adjust. You let the mattress reshape itself around the new dampness, and the straw pokes back with slightly more enthusiasm. You sigh. The goat sighs too. You're not sure if it's in sympathy or protest. You spend some time fantasizing about dry things. A blanket that doesn't smell like onions. A roof that keeps out more water than it lets in. A life where you don't have to calculate rainfall trajectory before falling asleep. You once heard, probably from someone lying, that noblemen have feather mattresses. The idea seems absurd. You imagine trying to sleep on a pile of birds. It's not appealing. Probably noisy. Probably still damp. The wind picks up. It slithers through the cracks in the wall, each one a little betrayal. You feel it on your neck, on your toes, in places you thought were covered. It's not so much a breeze as a reminder. You are a heating system for this house. Your body, your breath, your unwilling contribution to the communal warmth. And now, soaked and bitter, you're also part of the cooling system. Congratulations. You shift again. Not because it helps, but because staying still makes you more aware of how little help there is. Somewhere across the room, someone mutters in their sleep. You catch one word, possibly mold or cold. Could be both. Either way, it feels accurate. You close your eyes, but your ears stay open. You listen to the rain carve paths down the thatch. You listen to the slow bloop of a bucket filling in the corner. You try to convince yourself that the leak won't reach you again, that this new position is safe. You lie to yourself, because that's the only comfort available. Eventually, the leak quiets, or your hearing dulls, or your brain gives up. It's hard to say. There's a softness to the silence now, broken only by the occasional creak of the wood or the snuffle of something in the shadows. You let yourself drift. Not because you're comfortable, but because comfort is no longer the metric. You simply exist, wet, lumpy, half asleep. And if the roof decides to leak again, well, the bed will move, just like always, just like tomorrow night, just like every night. And somewhere nearby, the goat shifts slightly closer. The air smells faintly of damp wool and patience. And in the stillness, a new discomfort begins to rise. It's not just the drip that keeps you awake, though that one is consistent, like a slow insult. Somewhere to your left, near the part of the roof where it dips suspiciously inward, it begins again. A thick droplet of rainwater landing in a bowl someone forgot to move. You tried to move it yourself earlier, but your foot found the edge of the icy puddle beneath it instead. So now the bowl gets to stay, and the drip gets to win. You shift slightly, hoping for sleep, and succeed only in discovering that the straw under your hip has compressed into something indistinguishable from packed earth. There's a creak just behind you. Not quite a floorboard. Not quite a voice. That's how it begins, most nights. At first you think it's your own limbs complaining. But then it comes again, soft, strange, and not shaped like anything that should come from a human. And so begins the ritual of listening. Not because you want to, but because not listening is worse. The dark here isn't the polite kind that waits for your eyes to adjust. It's thick, pressing, like being swallowed slowly by wool. You stare into it and see only black. You listen to it, and you hear company. There's the rat, of course. There's always the rat. Sometimes two, depending on how badly someone stored the grain. You don't see it, but you know its voice. The scurry scratch of tiny claws across the ceiling beam. The sudden silence when it pauses to check whether you're asleep. The faint squeak of indecision before it resumes whatever nonsense rats believe is necessary at 3 a.m. Then the goat shifts again. A long, slow sigh from the other side of the longhouse, like she's tired of you existing in her general direction. She smells faintly of wet ash and something vaguely herbal, which might be the leftover poultice from that time she stepped on a nail, or might just be the smell of living inside the same place as your medicine. Either way, it clings to her like guilt. You hear her stretch, hooves clacking softly against stone, and then she lies down again, directly on something important. Probably your spare tunic. A snore erupts from the opposite corner, low and ragged, like someone dragging a bag of potatoes through gravel. You don't know which sibling it is, and you don't care anymore. Their breath whistles slightly at the peak of every exhale, like a kettle about to boil but never quite getting there. Every fourth breath, a wet little grunt. The pattern is mesmerizing and also deeply, profoundly offensive. You count them anyway. Somewhere nearer the door, the wind sighs again, thin and exhausted, through a crack in the wood. The air that follows it smells of smoke and wet dirt, and the floor by the threshold has grown soft again. You remember stepping in it earlier and wondering if it was more mud or manure. You chose to stop wondering after the second squelch. Sleep is theoretically available. You can sense it hovering, somewhere near your ankles, just out of reach. But then something else shifts. A quiet rustle. Too low to be wind. Too clumsy to be the rat. Something else. You hold your breath. Nothing. You breathe again. Then, from the thatch above your head, a soft flutter. A flap. Something feathery that doesn't belong inside. The last time that happened, it was a small owl that became very large when panicked. The time before, it was a bat. The time before that, no one really wants to talk about it. There was chanting involved. You try not to think about the ceiling. You pull your blanket tighter, which is generous, since blanket is the term you've decided to give the ragged bit of wool that smells like the corner of an old cupboard. It covers half of you adequately. The other half negotiates with the hem of your tunic and whatever warmth is still leaking off your neighbor's foot. You shift again and discover a dried pea under your spine. This is an improvement from last week when you found a spoon. The night continues its commentary. A cough, brief and purposeful, from someone one mat over. A groan from the fire, which is no longer a fire so much as a warm memory of one. And then, the sound. It is always the same. You hear it every few nights, always at the same time. A low, long scraping, like something heavy being dragged along the outer wall of the longhouse. Not quickly, not rhythmically, just once. A slow acknowledgement that you are not alone. No one else ever mentions it, but they all hear it. You can tell, because it's followed by that same pause, the one where even the snores stop, just for a heartbeat, as if the night has taken a breath in and hasn't quite decided whether to let it go. Then someone farts, and the world resumes its rhythm. The goat sighs again. The rat resumes its dance. The fire exhales a bit of smoke that smells of moss and last month's shoe leather. You accept this as your lullaby. Your neck itches, probably a flea. You scratch, and another straw splinter embeds itself somewhere it shouldn't. You try to lie still, but stillness invites sensation. The draft under your shoulder. The cold patch where your ankle strayed beyond the blanket's jurisdiction. The too warm crease where your elbow has been tucked for too long against your side. Outside, a dog barks. Far off, somewhere in the village. Then silence again. The kind of silence that's too quiet. You almost miss the snoring. Your mind begins to wander, not away from the room, because there's nowhere to wander to, but inward. You begin to think about the things you've stored away for such long nights. The creak of the cartwheel you fixed last week. The taste of yesterday's onion stew. The way your left foot always falls asleep when you lie like this. The shape of your mother's shawl. The feeling of wool against chapped lips. The moment of quiet that falls over the room just before someone coughs again. A faint scratching from under the floor this time. Probably not a rat. Probably. You press your palm against the wall beside you and feel the cold of it, like touching a tombstone. It doesn't give anything back. You wonder if it's raining still. The drip says yes. You picture the roof, slick with moss and resignation, slowly funneling water into the corners of your existence. Maybe in the morning you'll try to adjust the shingles again. Or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll move your bedding 6 inches to the left and declare it solved. You try to breathe slowly, deeply, in time with the goat, who has reached a sort of meditative snore, one that implies wisdom, or possibly indigestion. You begin to feel the weight of sleep approaching again, gently, warily, like a cat you're pretending not to look at. There is another noise, not loud, just unfamiliar, a soft shuffling, not quite footstep, not quite breeze, something in between. It might be nothing. It might be the wind remembering how to move through the eaves. Or it might be something else. You listen hard, not to the noise itself, but to what happens around it. The way the goat pauses, the rat freezes, the snores hold back. a tension that lasts only a few seconds before everything resumes, as if nothing happened. You decide very firmly not to investigate. Instead, you shift your weight again, find a slightly less terrible angle for your shoulder, and pull the blanket over the same cold foot for the third time. Your thoughts begin to drift again, this time toward dreams, maybe. If not dreams, then at least the softer edges of consciousness where nothing quite matters and time is a suggestion. Somewhere in the dark, the bowl fills. The straw creaks. The goat settles one last time, her breath warm and weirdly reassuring. A cough signals its arrival. Then another. The longhouse exhales. And you float. Not into rest, not exactly, but into something close enough, just far enough to stop counting sounds. Your bones bend into twilight again, as the first sleep recedes like the tide, leaving behind its driftwood of half-remembered warmth. You're not awake, but no longer fully submerged either, floating instead in that gray expanse between sleeps. In this second half of the night, the world holds its breath, waiting for you to join it, or for the world to crack its own rib under the weight of too much darkness. You dare not move your head. You dare not break the perfect tension of half-sleep. Instead, you lie as still as straw can hold you, enfolded by the whispers of what has already passed and what is still to come. If you listen carefully, you can still hear the small crackle of embers from hours ago, the fire that isn't a fire anymore, but a buried temper that pulses behind ash and sighs. You inhale deep, tasting smoke memory like a medicine you never asked for. The ember will die. By dawn, the hearth will have forgotten its purpose until someone decides to feed it again. And you, curled in your shared bed, will be neither here nor there, moving through the corridor of night's second act. You begin to sense movement around you, not through sound, too loud, and not through sight, for there is none, only the whisper-soft stirring of fabric and breath. Your sibling twists, or perhaps it's the goat shifting closer, searching for warmth or nervous dreams. Someone curses quietly in their sleep. A rat scurries across the threshold, landing somewhere near your ankle, and you fight the urge to squirm. You dare not startle the house into noticing you're still alive, breathing, present. There is a punctuation mark in the silence, a specific pause that marks midnight's turning. It is not signaled by bells or stars, but by a subtle ache in your joints, the kind that arises only when your body remembers clockwork beyond your control. Your shoulders drop a fraction. Your breath slows further. You feel your heart's murmur sink with the mortar-soft walls. And then, you exhale. A long, winding exhale that carries the residue of your first sleep and the promise of the second. Between these sleeps lies an interlude unbound by dreams or duties. It is neither night nor morning. It is not the time for gathering water or stubbing toes on cold floorboards. There is no proper purpose here, only presence. You know this hour from memory. You've lived it too often not to know its rhythm. The way the air seems to press closer to your face, as though asking a question you cannot answer. The quiet teeth chatter of the wooden walls contracting against the cold. The faint smell of hay dampened by the goat's breaths. You bear it all calmly, anchored by the muted chorus of breathing bodies beneath the quilt. Some nights, this pause stretches longer than others. You wait for a new wave of deep sleep to roll over you, carrying you into dawn's embrace. But here and now, sleep is drifting away somewhere else, refusing to return yet gracious enough to keep you company in its absence. You close your eyes tighter, as though that might coax it back. You imagine the way fresh straw feels, dry and forgiving. You imagine the way the sun lifts your lids in months not yet here. And then, inevitably, your shoulder stiffens again, your calf cricks from lying curled, and you resign yourself to existing between sleeps. This intermission is not idle. It carries burdens. Thoughts softly tangle in your mind. plans for tomorrow's chores, concerns about how to mend the roof, the satisfaction of a loaf that nearly held its shape earlier that day. You hold them gently, knowing they cannot harm you, but also knowing they cannot stay, because the time for planning is not here. The time for reflection is not now. Now is the time of waiting, of lingering sensations that don't require anything of you except endurance. You sense your pulse in your fingertips, like a faint drumbeat in a distant forest. You sense the weight of the quilt across your chest, a modest shelter that cannot fully promise safety. You sense the goats and rats circling, the siblings sharing your cool corner, each of you tethered to this house by breath and sweat, and the same single hole in the roof. You sense the loss of warmth behind your ribs, the gradual drop of body heat across your skin. You sense emptiness, not hunger exactly, but something hollow that hunger might one day fill. Sometimes you let yourself drift into half-dreams, soft scenes, a field warmed by dawn, grains of barley gleaming, a cup held in your hands that's not metal but clay, full of soup that doesn't scorch, the shape of a day that hasn't yet happened, quiet and possible. You chase these fleeting visions, but they dissipate as soon as you notice them, dissolving into the dampness of night. And so you drift instead. There is a kind of solace in this dual sleep tradition, a rhythm older than any clock, older than the bells that call you to work. You feel connected to unknown ancestors who believed in two sleeps, not unnatural, but natural. The night was a book with 2 chapters, and you live them. You do not stumble blindly through a single long stretch. You hold space for waking in the middle, for contemplation in darkness, for the small tremble between rest and activity. You honor the rhythm, and the rhythm honors you. It lets you exist in more than one tempo, sometimes slow, sometimes still, always human. You hear a shift in the bed beside you. Your sibling sighs, repositioning. The goat snuffles softly, seeking a better spot on a straw pile that isn't meant for livestock. The chamber pot clinks faintly somewhere beneath your sibling's mattress, a reminder that you all share the same night's burdens. Your shirt has bunched beneath your shoulder blade, damp with perspiration and the fog of breath. You shift slightly, a breath, a sigh, a subtle agreement with your body's needs. The straw compresses with a soft crack, and you wait to see if the leak will follow. It does not. Tonight it holds off. The silence grows again. You imagine yourself anchored in it. You imagine yourself as part of the longhouse itself. Your bones align with the beams overhead. Your breathing matches the weather outside. You become a fixture, like a carved support or a threaded bundle of hay. And in that moment, you feel a strange comfort that once you are gone, whenever that may be, this house will hold similar rhythms. Someone else will lie here, breathing through the long night, waking at midnight, pressing against the memory of your presence. Time slips, not forward, not backward, but laterally. The second sleep approaches unhurriedly. You feel it through the gradual stilling of stray thoughts, the slow return of haze behind your eyelids, the soft collapse of tension in your shoulders. You don't notice it arrive, not like the first sleep, which descended as though it had purpose, but like a sigh you weren't expecting. You just shift into it. The world recedes. The hunger shrinks its edges. The temperature becomes irrelevant. And before you realize it, you have arrived at the point where being alive no longer requires effort. There is no triumphant crescendo. There is only the soft landing into rest, a memory of fire below the hearth, of damp straw and forgotten bread, lingers in your bones. Night will not end until morning's bell greets you, and you will wake again with fresh aches, colder feet, and half-remembered dreams. But here, in sleep's second act, you find the quiet end of everything. No fear, no schedule, just dissolution. You drift beyond this moment, past the threshold of conscious discomfort, into that place where straw and soul merge. The walls remain silent. The goat breathes on. The bed holds you like a promise. And you, finally, are still. A soft tremor in the night shifts your attention. Not the wind, nor the drip, but a personal, insistent buzz creeping through your linen tunic. You lie still as stone, wary of movement that might betray your discomfort to the bodies slumbering beside you. The itch is familiar, too familiar. You know it, and you know it knows you. This is not a random tickle of stray straw or a migrating splinter. No, this is the kind of itch that sticks to memory, the kind of itch that demands a name. You named it Gerald last week, because naming discomfort is half the battle. Gerald sits on your calf somewhere beneath the layers of coarse wool and patched garments. You press your leg flat, trying to trap the sensation under muscle and cloth, to contain it in place so it becomes less immediate, less intrusive. It doesn't work. Gerald is persistent. He will rise again, like a tide. Your mind drifts back to when you first met him. A minute after settling into the cold straw one night, you felt a slight crawl near your ankle. You brushed at it and felt something slide away. You froze, heart skittish, waiting for the confirmation. A tiny, terrible warmth where there should be nothing. When you looked, but not too closely, you saw a speck on your linen that moved. You flicked it away, a poor gesture in a war you didn't agree to fight. That's when Gerald took up residence. Tonight, you sense him moving. The faint scrape of legs against skin, the momentary thrum right above your bone. You stare into the darkness, waiting for the night to answer. It doesn't, so you shift again, pressing calf into straw, thigh into blanket, all in silent negotiation. But Gerald is a master of uninvited persistence. He does not yield. You recall your sibling's face when you mentioned Gerald for the first time in the dim corners of early night. A mixture of sympathy and suspicion. Do you have fleas? Didn't you bathe with goat's wet water 2 nights ago? When was the fire last banked? They don't say it, but you feel the question pressing. Was this rash self-inflicted? You considered calling Gerald guilty of conspiracy. Instead, you offered silent excuses. It's hard not to feel ashamed when discomfort becomes public knowledge. The room is smaller now than before. Not physically, but psychologically. Every twitch of wool against flesh feels magnified through the fog of midnight. You press on your calf with a heel, just enough to make the itch retreat. It doesn't leave, just rearranges. You curse inwardly, feeling old before your time. You listen for movement elsewhere. The goat is still, or so you tell yourself. Siblings breathe. The chamber pot sits undisturbed. Outside, the wind does not whisper but sighs with the weight of your suffering. You realize you've been holding your breath. You release it slowly, and for a moment, Gerald seems to quiet, as though offended. But he returns. He always returns. You wince as your calf twitches involuntarily. The linen is damp. You smell something heavy in the air, not quite sour, but needy. The scent of unwashed bodies and stale sleep merging. You wish for water, even cold, even cruel. But there is none until dawn, at best. The bucket by the hearth has crust, and to fetch it is to risk stoking the fire, invaluable fuel, or risk disturbing someone's sleep with the scrape of cauldron and bucket. Not worth it. So you endure. You shift your hips, pressing your back into straw, hoping to smother Gerald between mattress and fabric. But the itch travels again, to your side. You pause, mid-breath, letting your body still, as if you expect Gerald to sense your stillness and abandon the mission. Nothing happens. You sigh, muscles relaxing. He stays. While the night holds you in its half-dream trance, your thoughts loop. The name, Gerald. The imagery of a courtly bard, tailored in your imagination. There's ironic comfort in assigning personality to your pest. Gerald is not your enemy. He's just a small irritant with ambition. You wonder which is worse, a blister that throbs, or an itch that refuses to sleep. There's some wisdom in persistence. You've lived in discomfort longer than some would survive. You've tolerated cold, hunger, aches. But this kind of discomfort is personal. It operates beneath your skin, insists on being felt. It wards off sleep in the way the wind warns you not to rest. You don't hate Gerald. You admire his tenacity. But tonight, you wish he had other plans. Your muscles ache, joint creaks, softened by quilts. You realize your foot has fallen asleep from lying so still. You press it gently, coaxing circulation back. The spasm is welcome compared to biting itch. You roll to your side to adjust, but flinch when calf rubs suddenly against wool, a betrayal of movement. You must hold still again. Gerald demands it. A distant groan, someone shifting inside a dream gone sour. You hope they wake, so you wouldn't feel so absurd in your nightly battle, but sleep holds them tight. You lie retrained, stomach hollow, legs rigid. The itch dominates. You think of naming other parts, Stella, Piper, Nigel. You conjure a full court of minor annoyances, all your nightly trustees. The thought raises a dry smile at the corner of your lips. Distraction may be the tool. You imagine a field on a warmer day, grass underfoot, breeze touching bare skin. You imagine soaking that skin in fresh water until it wrinkles, then drying with cloths that don't shed. You imagine sunlight leaking through a solid roof. Gerald fades for a breath. You open your mouth, but the next moment the itch returns, tenderer, wanting recognition. Pain is quiet. It whispers. It reminds you that you are alive. Gerald whispers, pushing you away from sleep. Pain whispers, keeping you from forgetting. In this room of shadows and straw, all of you whisper in concert. Discomfort, endurance, living. You decide to name the sleep you hope for next. Not deep, not restful, just enough to eclipse Gerald briefly. You inhale deeply, imagining breath as medicine. You exhale, again and again. The night stretches. Your calf twitches. The quilt rustles as you sigh. You imagine chapters yet to come, the roof leak that wakes the whole house, the two-sleep rhythm ceasing to comfort, the child's night talk weaving new presents. But tonight, it's just you and Gerald, and whatever fate decides for the rest of you in this long darkness. Your vision dims. The edges of the room blur. You feel the itch soften, perhaps lulled by your acceptance. Or maybe Gerald has simply paused. You don't know. You don't need to know. The ache of sleep is returning, and so you drift. Not into forgetting, but into gentle reprieve. Gerald remains, unwanted, unbowed, but less commanding now, subdued by your slow descent into half-sane rest. You let it be. You let yourself be. In the hush between breaths, in the cool press of quilts, in the shared suffering of a peasant night, you find yourself folding into the darkness. Tomorrow, you will scratch Gerald free. Tonight, you dream him sleepy. The itch, blessedly, has gone quiet for now, either because you've finally grown numb to it, or because it's simply waiting to surprise you again mid-dream with a passionate comeback. Either way, you shift in your makeshift nest. The straw sighing beneath you like it too has had enough of the long, aching night. Around you, the longhouse has dipped into that sticky silence that arrives only after everyone has stopped pretending they're still awake. A breathless, brittle hush, where even the goat refuses to chew its cud. You lie there, flat and still, the wool of your tunic prickling at your neck and the thought pressing in again. Tonight, like all nights, might be your last. You don't dwell on it, not really, not in the open daylight of thought, but it's always there, a quiet thrum beneath your breath. You've seen it enough to know. Seen your grandmother go to bed after supper, knees too swollen to bend, mouth still sticky with broth, and not get up again. Seen your neighbor collapse against the hearth one winter night, just before the storm, the old woman curling like paper around a flickering coal. She'd spent her final hours mending a tear in her husband's breeches. He wore them the next day, as though they hadn't just been stitched by a dying hand. Death does not arrive here with ceremony or thunder. It does not knock. It simply slips in with the cold, with the ache, with the stillness. And sometimes you envy it. Not because you're especially tired of living, though some days it does seem like an especially long chore, but because sleep and death here are cousins, close cousins. They dress the same and walk the same and whisper from the same corner of the room. When you sleep, you lie flat and quiet and stiff. You do not toss. You cannot afford to. Tossing earns elbows, earns mutters, earns a foot to the spine. Sleep is stillness, not rest. You bury your arms against your chest, the way the elder men are folded in their shrouds, and let your eyes grow heavy like wool soaked in rain. It's no wonder that when someone dies in their sleep, no one notices until breakfast. The blanket you share, scratchy, damp along the edges from someone else's breath, offers more symbolic than physical comfort. It's thin and laced with age, just enough to make you feel almost covered, which is worse than not at all. A lie that leaves your toes exposed and your shoulders chilled. You curl. You press into the person beside you, not from affection, but because proximity is the only available form of insulation. And you try not to think about the smell, or the sound, or the soft, damp wheeze that may or may not be a symptom of something catching. You've known people to go like this. Quiet. Software midwinter especially. The fire dies too early, or the draft sneaks in through the roof and steals the heat from the room like a pickpocket. It isn't always the old. Sometimes it's the ones who didn't eat well enough that week, or the ones who walked too far with wet feet. You don't speak of it, but it hangs in the air like smoke, the knowledge that any one of you could fall asleep and simply not return, and no one would scream or cry out. They would wake, pause, then nod. Ah, well, it was their time. As though time is a generous thing. You think about your own sleep, shallow and cold, measured more by discomfort than peace. Dreams come, sure, but they're not always yours. Sometimes they belong to someone else entirely. A whisper from a sibling's mouth, a sigh from the other side of the room, a groan too quiet to be fully awake, but too loud to ignore. Your dreams are often shapeless, drifting things, the kind that melt upon waking and leave only a vague sensation behind. A chill, a weight on your chest, the hint of something unsaid. Sometimes you imagine yourself rising, floating out of your body and into the beams above. You picture what you'd look like from up there, curled, unwashed, barely moving, a sack of bones wrapped in threadbare linen and exhaustion. You wonder if you'd look peaceful. You doubt it. Peaceful isn't how things happen here. Things happen slowly, painfully, in splinters and splashes. You don't get drama, you get decay. And yet, when it does come, sleep that is, it feels not like relief, but surrender. Like being slowly smothered with something soft. Your thoughts slow, each one pressing down a little more heavily than the last, until they pile upon you like damp wool. And finally, mercifully, you are crushed beneath them. Not gone, just elsewhere. Your breath eases, your limbs settle, your mind slides sideways, as if stepping out of its own skin. It's the only time you feel truly still. Not when you're sitting, not when you're praying, not even when you're alone. Only here, in the dark, in the quiet stretch between chores and morning, do you feel like nothing is expected of you, except stillness. And even that is effort, but at least it asks nothing more. Occasionally, the silence breaks. A cough, a whimper, a long, slow release of wind from someone who thought they could hold it. It doesn't matter. No one reacts. You're all half dead with fatigue. The sound of a body misbehaving in the night is as normal as the wind. or the drip, or the creak of wood shifting in its sleep. You think dimly of the graveyard, just past the trees, down the slope. Half the village sleeps there now. The other half simply hasn't made it yet. It's not frightening exactly. It's familiar. You've spent time among those stones. They're closer than some of your neighbors. You remember names by the way the moss grows. You recall cousins by which slab your heel stubbed on the way to fetch water. The priest says the soul rises, that it leaves the body and floats to somewhere cleaner, warmer, and infinitely more forgiving. You don't know if you believe him. But it's a nice thought, and nice thoughts are rare enough that you don't waste them by questioning. Instead, you lie there, feeling the numbness creep up your legs and into your back, grateful that nothing currently itches or drips or burns. You feel the slow, rhythmic rise and fall of your breath, and you think, yes, this is what it must feel like sleep, like death, like neither, like both. You imagine yourself becoming part of the bed, sinking into the straw and becoming root, part of the floor, part of the land itself. It wouldn't be so bad. At least then the cold couldn't find you. You do not fear the end. You fear interruption, a mouse across your foot, a spill from the chamber pot, a sudden gust through a crack in the wall where the wood never quite meets. You'd rather fade away than be forced to start over. Sleep is too hard-earned to give up once you have it. And eventually, after what feels like another lifetime, it takes you. Not because you were ready, but because it decided you'd fought long enough. Your fingers curl, your breath shallows, your thoughts vanish. You are still. Not dead. Not yet. But close enough to feel the difference soften. In the dark, the goat shifts. The fire coughs out one final ember. A child murmurs a nonsense word in their sleep. And you lie there, wrapped in silence and sweat, and something heavier than rest. Outside, in the chill beyond the walls, the world turns slowly toward morning. And inside, as your final breath of thought dissolves, a single sound stirs the room. A bell, or maybe a rooster, dragging the world back from its sleep. But not just yet. For now, the quiet still holds. Tomorrow will wake you, but not quite yet. A faint echo emerges in the darkness, drifting through the timber walls like an unwelcome guest. It's the church bell, its peal low and uncertain, anchoring you to the cold wooden floor and the mossy straw beneath your tired body. You lie where you fell asleep, feeling half buried under cloth and exhaustion, a warm half-breath away from being lost entirely in dreams. But the bell calls, a summons not from your own mind, but from somewhere outside where time still matters. It rings once, twice, an invitation you cannot refuse, even though you would rather not rise. In the space between the second and third toll, you shift ever so slightly, aware of every layer beneath your skin. The wool tunic, damp on your back. The patchy sleeve, threadbare at the elbow. The rough wrapped leg that harmlessly prods against your calf. You've become a rolled tapestry of textures, some comforting, many uncomfortable, all unavoidable. And now, the bell demands your attention. The tile roof above you creaks, as if to acknowledge the bell's echo. Somewhere a cock crows too, the first rooster of dawn, startlingly shrill in the pre-dawn hush. It's less a declaration of morning than a jerk awake, a call that says the day is coming whether you like it or not. You recognize the pattern. Bell, crow, another bell. The world is deciding for you now. It shapes the boundaries of your night's second sleep and signals the inexorable shift toward labor, chore, hunger, expectation. You resist for just a moment. You lie heavy and still, as though the friction of fabric against straw might glue you in place. The goat beside you shifts her weight, her breath warm on your legs, a small comfort like an ember lingering in your lap. But she too knows the time has come. She turns and settles her bulk elsewhere, nudging a sibling awake in the process. pulling clandestine breaths that feel larger than they should in the new day's cold. The bell sounds again, low, rolling, reluctant, and the world shifts. You count the strokes, feeling each as a knot tied in your spine. 1, a fullness in your chest. 2, a twinge in your calf. 3, the tick of loss that comes when sleep ends. You force yourself to tuck the quilt tighter, to gather the warmth that remains, as if speed can delay dawn. But it can't. The cock crows again, louder this time. It sounds angry, humiliated, as though summoned too early by the bell and eager to make itself heard. The second crow shakes you more than the bell ever will. Not because it's louder, but because it's life in that sound. Awake and difficult, ruling out the refuge of silence. You feel your heart twist in response. Somewhere across the room, your sibling stirs. A blanket shifts. A boot drags against the floor. A slow movement that speaks of complaints and curses you don't hear. You do hear footsteps. The neighbor, kneeling to relight the small hearth fire. The scrape of dry twigs against ember marks their passage. You sense warmth lifting from below, creeping through the gaps in the planks. You sense the house groan in response. Yes, morning. Yes, today must begin again. You stay where you are a heartbeat more than your body wants, trading silence for warmth. You feel sweat crusting your back. You feel the loose straw clinging to your wet skin. You feel the quilt thin where breath escaped, and you feel the cold drafts threading lower down your feet. You breathe out slowly, a long exhale that carries the final fragment of night away. The bell's last rung fades before the roar of the barn door hinges opening. Someone greets the dawn with purpose. Another barn door somewhere opens in response. The day begins in layered echoes. Bell, cock, barn, footfall. You could pretend you don't hear it, but the sound pushes you gently from within. You draw a weary arm through the tunic's sleeve, inch by careful inch, aware of the dryness of wool on skin. You sit up. The straw compressed beneath you folds and shifts with a sound like cracking ice. You feel the ache in your back as you straighten, a sharp knot that burns slightly where the quilt edges pressed into you all night. You ease into a sitting position, blanket pooling around your waist, ankles cold where the hem didn't reach. You wait one breath, just one, before pushing off the straw. Your toes meet cold floorboards, and you pause, savoring the bareness. Cold is bracing this morning. It keeps your mind from wandering back to sleep's last place. You rise fully, quilt draping your shoulders like a sad cloak, and you stand. The room yawns with you, creaking blankets, shifting bodies, goats stretching. You collect your mat of makeshift bed, quilts, old sacks, straw stacks, and fold them together in a practiced motion. The quilt smells like layered nights and stifled breath. You roll it, tie it roughly with twine, and lift it onto your shoulder. The weight is familiar, your burden, your warmth, your reminder of the night. You step toward the hearth, each board cold underfoot, each creak an echo you cannot ignore. You crouch and coax flame with broken wood, embers crackling to life in tiny livid sparks. The warmth returns, gentle but steady. You stir the coals, sifting ash with bare fingers, feeling rough grit under your nails. You don't mind. You breath in the smell of smoke, raw comfort. With fire lit, your bones relax just enough to forget. For a moment there is only the hearth, the quilt bundled at your feet, and a pair of eyes blinking in the light. The goat stares. She blinks back. No affection, just acknowledgement. She's ready. The rest of the house shifts into readiness too. Barn tools rattle softly. Footsteps pad to the door. The wind tugs against the eaves, testing for a breeze to carry it into the day. You stand, brush lint from your robe, and step out into the gray morning. Outside, the world is still dim. Morning is a promise held in mist. But it's real. The fields seem white from frost. the grass crisp, each leaf coated in a fine diamond dust. You tread softly, careful not to break it. Cold bites your cheeks, but your lungs expand as though swallowing snow. The cock crows one final time, definitive, commanding, and you answer with a breath and a step forward, following the call of responsibility. Church bells, roosters, dawn. They decide your fate today. They remind you that you are not a king, not a lord, not a creature of leisure. You are bound to cycle, sleep, wake, work, repeat. The rhythm is old, not fair, and not chosen. But it is how things are done. You pull on your damp boots, feel the misalignment of your toes from sleeping. You notice the rash named Gerald, already itching again at the base of your leg. You suppress the twitch it demands. You sharpen your gaze on the distant steeple, where the bell's silhouette fades into mist. You imagine the faces of your family gathered inside that shadowed hall, etched with the same fatigue, the same acknowledgement of fate crushed thin by hope and bone. And you think this is enough, not to pray, not to believe, but to exist. You trudge toward the barn as crows wheel overhead. The wind sees you coming and rushes to greet you. The animals stir. The fire behind you glows a promise of return. The quilt looks small over your shoulder, but you carry it anyway. In the silence of pre-sunrise, you understand that the life you live is shaped by the sound of bells and roosters. No matter who you are, no matter what you hold dear, morning will come, and you must answer it. So you do. One step, then another. You step off the threshold of familiarity and into a world that seems to whisper, "You're stealing tonight." The door closes behind you with a complaint of wood against stone, as if it's annoyed by your departure. You feel the weight of possessions on your back, the quilt rolled tight, a small sack of bread, a clay flask half heavy with water. Already your shoulders ache, an early reminder that the road is not charity, it demands. The dawn is pale, the sky a thin bruise of gray. Underfoot, the path is a sneeze of dust and dried leaves. You know every dip, every root that thrusts upward like a hidden tooth. You walk slow, anticipating the imperfection of the ground, each foot raised with care, cultivated by cold mornings and chipped nails. For a moment, the wind tugs at your collar, and you imagine you're swaddled in water. But it's just the chill, rolling off open fields that don't belong to you. Sleep on the road is a theft. You know this from past journeys. You remember nights when you tried to collapse near the fields, carpeted by grass too thin for comfort. You remember the dew seeping into your clothes, making the wool damp and the skin itch. A memory of regret you could not scratch. You remember the rustle of a fox padding too close, the twitch of small animals startled by your presence, the distant call of another traveler's horn echoing across the valley. Sleep then feels like a gamble. Will you wake to pain, to cold, to the disappearance of one of your few belongings? And yet, here you are, choosing it again, out of necessity, because the village grows smaller behind you, and the fields vanish. The open road calls like a creditor. You trudge forward, every step a transaction of warmth for distance. Your hands ache. You've gripped your sack too long, expecting it to carry more than it does. You adjust the quilt's position over your back, trying to keep the damp from the morning grass out, the noisiest layer pressed inward. In your imagination, you smooth it out neatly, but here on the road, there is no neatness, only compression and grit. A milestone or boundary stone stands squat and unwelcoming at a bend in the path. Moss grows thick atop it, and you pause, just long enough to rest your fingertips against its damp surface. The moss feels soft at first, but turns gritty within seconds, pressed down by birds or time or travelers like you. You close your eyes for a heartbeat, letting the continuity of it, people passing here for years before you, ease something inside. But the ache returns too quickly, reminding you that the sacred comfort of connection cannot break your hunger or your fatigue. Further down, you come across a lone oak tree. Its branches reach wide, swollen with sap. You take shade beneath it, even though the sun is restrained. You kneel and sip your water, careful not to slosh it onto your tunic. Even a small wet patch brings shivers in this weather. You hold the flask close to your chest as if it's a small companion, because it is. You imagine it whispering reassurance in moments of doubt. When the water is gone, you stand again. Dust swirls around your boots in little rings. You look at your clothes, stained, torn at the knees, stitched with a dozen regrets. You wish for a chance to wash them, but you know washing is a luxury only the well-fed can afford. Each stain tells a story you'd rather forget. Mash spilled over a night, blood from a scraped knee, the sticky residue of midday fruit. They are your autobiography, written in discomfort and necessity. Sleeping on the road means embracing vulnerability. There is no warm hive of bodies to press against. Instead, you tuck yourself into a hollow in the ground or press against the trunk of a tree. You place the quilt beneath you first, its scrape on grass, its rough edges grazing ankles. You cannot fold it perfectly. You do not have the time. You lay flat, back to earth, each breath slightly louder than the last. You wait for the ache to settle. It takes longer on the road. Your body protests. You shift once, twice, before you find a position that feels like loosening. Never restful, but tolerable. The quilt pulls away at one corner, exposing your shoulder to the air. You curse softly inside your mind. The world does not ask permission to share cold. You close your eyes and recall sleep's shape. It's not soft. It's not warm. It's a survival pact, an agreement to surrender everything you are, so dawn might find you alive. A distant crow startles you. You open your eyes, half-forgotten reflex, and see nothing but sky and grass. You lie still. When nothing happens, you exhale and let sleep creep in. It comes piecemeal, a wave of bone weight, a darkening at the edges of your vision, a slowing of your pulse until it nearly breaks into silent pitch. You think of your home, straw, goat, hearth that might rest by now. You think of the butcher's boy who jostled your shoulder this morning, the farmer's hound that barked impatiently at dawn. You think of a loaf you left cooling on a windowsill, and wonder if hunger could be worse than cold. Sleep doesn't answer, nor does death. You settle into the uneasy truce. Your muscles slacken. The quilt becomes softer. You dream of roots and stones, of barns and walls that seem to cradle you instead of test your endurance. It dissolves quickly, but not before your breath lengthens and your pulse slows. Then something moves, something small, perhaps a vole or field mouse, something that pinpricks your awareness with a reminder. You are here. You are sleeping on someone else's domain. The quilt shifts as you stir. The cold kisses your ankles again. You wake at once, but only halfway. You lie there for a while longer, suspended between rest and vigilance, until the ache in your spine reminds you why you wouldn't have slept deeper, even if you dared. You stand. A slow art. You rub your eyes. You gather your quilt and sack again. The road awaits. Another mile, another discomfort, another negotiation with cold and hunger, another stolen moment of sleep, taken at risk. But you are alive. You are still walking. You are on your way. Ahead lies the next village, the next threshold of straw and stone and night's weak promises. But for now, the road hums underfoot. The wind is low and steady, and you carry your night theft quilt as if it were hope. The world tilts toward evening again. You trudge forward. You left the road behind, stepping across the threshold of unfamiliar thresholds, and the darkness draped itself over the walls instantly. There are no travelers here to witness your arrival, only the longhouse's sigh and the low hum of someone already waiting. The smell greets you first, tangy, damp, like sour milk left too long in the midday heat. It clings to coats and sour-throated breaths, and underneath it, a careful layer of camphor or wormwood. Someone tried to mask it. It failed. Illness sleeps with you now. It doesn't announce itself like a guest. It drifts in as though born of the house. It lingers in breath, in quilts, over shambling footsteps. A weight in the mattress, a hollowness in the air. You feel it before you perceive it, a worn-down sense, as if the house has bent to its presence long enough to forget. As you step inside, your boots press the straw-thick threshold, soft, compressing underfoot, and the ache in your legs reminds you that travel had its bargains. You shift the quilt from your shoulder to hang along your arm, its damp bulk already seeping cold to your skin. Inside, someone coughs, soft, abrupt, like gravel scraping the back of a throat. You move to the hearth, which is reborn this evening into something fierce, a flame crying for attention. The air lifts from it, sweet with smoke and sorrow. A neighbor stands there, draped in a dark veil of rags. They are hollowed by time, by coughs, by nights of fever dreams that turn them weak. You do not come closer than necessary, because illness carries itself with a hunger that can eat companionship. You step back and drop your quilt gently by the wall, wary of spreading its warmth too close, of giving offense by too much comfort. You settle on the straw near the fire, the warmth seeping into your bones where the road's cold still lives. There is a log split there, dry, lazy, and you poke it into flame. It flares, crackles. Shadows on the walls dance in time with breath. Nothing stirs except the illness lying in the corner mat, its ragged chest rising and falling in uneven rhythms. You could lie next to it, share the warmth of company. But illness is greedy. It doesn't keep to half of the blanket. It devours whole quilts. It does not thank you for your sacrifice. It coughs at night, sometimes so violently that even the goat stirs. So you wait. You wait in quiet observation, quiet as a spy, cold as necessity. You hold your breath between you and the sick. In the stale light, you notice the sheen of sweat on a forehead, the way blankets are tucked too tight. You sense the damp that gathers in folds. You see cracks in the skin near where the cough twists it. You feel your own breath quiet down, wary of hosting a new hitchhiker in your lungs. Illness is not polite. It shares without asking. You recall other nights like this, nights when you lay half awake, listening to breath that rattles and wheezes, nights when the mattress beneath you was soggy with fever sweat, nights when your own body roared with enough heat to scare away sleep and bring death to the doorstep. On those nights, illness talked. It didn't quietly ache. It hollered. And you feared the holler more than the quiet. But tonight, illness sleeps. A kind surrender, not a victory. You feel its presence as a soft bloom rather than a spike. The neighbor breathes shallow, throat clicking. The fire murmurs. The goat chews its cud on your other side, gaze forgiven by nothing, wholly present. You sit in the center of it all, a stranger and a witness. Your own body says it's tired, not the bone-weary weight of travel, but a deeper marrow fatigue. You consider lying down, curling your aching spine on straw. You consider placing your quilt beside theirs, letting warmth share space. You consider if that'd be kind or foolish. But the illness might take more than warmth. It might take you. You remain in vigil rather than slumber. Vigil is a kind of sleep, half-sensing, quiet, and controlled. Sleep forgets itself. Vigil remembers. You hold vigil tonight. You notice a trickle of sweat tracing lines down someone's temple. The blankets are thick. The night is thawless. You retract your breath so it doesn't disturb someone who might already be too hot. A cough rumbles in the chest again, deeper than any before, the kind that rumbles through a body's foundation. The walls vibrate softly in response. You place a hand on your own chest, in sympathy or fear. Illness demands suffering, but it also demands care. You reach slowly for a cloth dipped in cool water, Straw basket perched by the hearth smelled of onions and suffering. You dampen it, feel its weight, and press it gently against the fevered forehead. The cloth is wet, slightly bitter from use, but it cools for a moment. A muted offering. There's no praise, no thank you. Only the slow exhale through cracked lips, a tremor of response. You hold the cloth until it warms, then you place it gently on a nearby stone slab, silent and patient. The cough recedes into nothing, an exhausted retreat. You allow your own breath to refill the space. You feel both apart and anchored. Outside, wind slithers through chinks in the lids and board walls, stirring a ghost of cold. Inside, illness turns in the straw, a stiff moan against movement. You sense the discomfort everywhere, in the scratch of wool against skin, the grit between palm and blanket, the hum of fear in the room's edge. You imagine the room with empty walls, as if illness never arrived. You imagine the sickness as a shadow to step around. But reality remains. The shared breaths, the shared space, the shared dread. After a time, the fever sweat slows. The body's tremor eases. The heavy heart of illness loosens its venom. You stay, still as straw, still as sleeper. You do not inch closer. You do not look away. You wait. You hold the vigil. A soft rustle at dawn, or maybe before. Too new to call it morning, but too late for night to hold sway. The person shifts, raises a hand to their face, then lowers it. The mask of fever is still there, lighter and rougher. The cloth sits damp on the stone. You move quietly to pick it up. Cold has invaded again. Air upon cloth. Cloth upon your palm. You fold it and place it in the basin. Use it again tonight, you tell yourself, once the illness stirs you back. You stand. Stand softly. Stretch joints that forgot movement. The illness manager in you says, feed them. Flour water. Onion stew, if not broth. But you are not the kitchen tonight. Someone else will stir the pot with a slop of barley and water. Someone else will share the food. You will step back. You will stand mute in the background. Your reward is simply that the compile of breath beside you remains steady. Outside, the first cock crows. Another life begins. Your quilt, rolled and forgotten, waits in familiar corner. The goat shifts again and blinks at you. Next to it, the sick one breathes deeper for a moment, then shallows. They're still here. You cross to the hearth. You dip another cloth in water to loosen the sweat that saturates the blankets and fill the basin again. Warm water, not scalding, not enough to sting. You wash your hands in it, grime and anxiety dissolved. You take a rag and smooth the wet cloth over your own forehead. You'll need to go again soon. Rest will come later. For now, you are a witness, a caretaker, a guardian of breath and faint flame. You imagine tomorrow night. Will illness still sleep with you? Will someone else, yourself maybe, share its stained blanket? Will you step outside into the night to gather water? Will you watch over the one breathing beside you, ensuring they make it through one more day? You probably will. It's the rhythm of this life. Illness sleeps with you, next to you, over you sometimes, smothering sleep into your lungs. And you keep moving anyway, bearing the weight of its presence, the weight of your own trembling spine, the weight of communal breath. The fire crackles once, a small reminder that warmth remains. You pat it gently with a stick, coaxing a feeble spark. It will persist. It always does. You gather your senses, the tang of sweat, straw, herbs, the scratch of wool, the hum of breath. You close your eyes, heavy but not asleep, and imagine the next night's vigil will be easier, cooler, less demanding. Perhaps you'll find yourself rested instead of drained. But that remains unknown. Night has not ended. Illness lies beside you, sleeping, not dead, not fully alive, just waiting. And you You lean into your quilt and brace for another night. The sounds of coughing taper off with the night, swallowed by the low crackle of coals and the slow drip of moisture from the beams above. You don't know whose breath still wheezes, whose fever is fading, whose is rising, but none of it matters anymore, because today has drained you in a way that almost feels merciful. It didn't start kindly, of course. Nothing here does. The chill that greeted your skin in the early dark felt like an insult, not a beginning. But the chores lined up as they always do, mute, patient, inevitable. You rose with your spine aching and your toes unsure they were still attached, and already you knew. This would be one of those days, the ones where you don't think. You just bend and lift and bend again. You move the same bundle of kindling twice because someone forgot they'd already moved it. You dig the trench that will be flooded by next week's rain. You rake the ashes of a fire that refuses to catch and then pretend you meant to do it that way. You don't complain, not because you're brave, but because even words feel too expensive. Everything is heavy. The buckets, the wood, your limbs, the sky. The air is so damp it feels like it's sitting on your shoulders. You carry more than you're meant to, not out of strength, but because you know if you stop, someone else will have to. And their face already looks more tired than yours. Or perhaps it's yours you've glimpsed reflected in a puddle, mistaking it for theirs. Either way, you don't pause long enough to find out. Your hands swell slightly by noon. There's a kind of dull burn in the webbing between your fingers. Not pain exactly, but a soreness that has memorized your name. It whispers to you as you grip the hoe, the pail, the worn shaft of the rake. The tools are smooth from years of use, but never soft. Nothing is soft. Even the soil resists your touch, clumped together like a cold loaf refusing to rise. You scrape and scratch, and try to remind yourself it's almost planting time. Almost. The promise of crops is always just out of reach. Like sleep, like comfort, like anything warm that lingers longer than it should. The day unfolds like a frayed blanket, still technically whole, but with every thread pulling apart. You fix a thatch patch, and the one beside it begins to rot. You patch a tunic, and the hem falls open. You chase the goat, because it's chewing something it shouldn't, only to find it's the one scrap of wool meant for next month's mending. You yell, not out loud, but inside your head, where the noise bounces against your skull and sits there, sulking. You eat when the sun says it's time. Not because you're hungry, that sensation passed you hours ago, but because the others stop, and that's the signal. The bread is yesterday's, or perhaps the day before's. It's hard to tell. You soak it in broth that tastes like boiled resignation, and still, you're grateful. Because it's warm, because it's food, because it's one of the rare moments you sit, legs folded, spine curved, surrounded by the same shuffling, chewing, breathing others who exist in your life more as sounds and smells than people. You don't talk. There's no breath for that. Just the shared rhythm of spoons scraping and the occasional sniffle. Afternoon brings more lifting, more bending, more reminding yourself that no one's coming to help. You begin to dream of lying down, not in sleep, not yet, but just lying. On a log, on a floor, on the dirt, if that's what's available. But each time you try, someone calls, or a task appears, or the wind shifts and your body follows, as if moved by instinct and not will. By dusk, your arms feel like they're filled with mud, heavy and slow, sloshing inside. Your back has its own opinions now. It pulls left when you move right. Your feet throb in a pattern you can't quite match to your steps. You stop caring. The exhaustion has pushed through discomfort and come out the other side. You are no longer sore. You are simply hollowed. And that is the best kind of day. Because when night arrives, you don't have to try to sleep. You don't have to fight the cold, or count the creaks in the roof, or negotiate with your own restless limbs. You lie down. if that's the word for curling yourself around a loose pile of straw wrapped in a fraying cloth. And you melt, not gently, not with grace, but fully, utterly. Your body collapses inward like bread dough punched down after rising too high. The warmth from nearby bodies is a blur, not a bother. The smell is familiar, almost comforting, like the breath of animals you've known longer than some people. There are noises, of course. There always are. Someone shifts. Someone farts. Someone mutters about a dream they've half forgotten already, but none of it touches you, because you are tired enough not to notice. And that, truly, is the goal. Not peace, not joy, not even rest. Just enough exhaustion to override the cold, the fear, the splinters, the itch that usually keeps you scratching through the night. It's still there, probably, but your fingers won't lift. You've earned this sleep not with stillness, but with motion. Endless, repetitive, soul-dragging motion. And it has bought you what nothing else can. Unconsciousness. You dream, maybe. You don't remember. You don't care. The dreams will fade before the ache does. The ache will wake with you. It always does. But for now, your limbs have gone dumb, and your thoughts have followed. That, in this place, is what passes for a blessing. You are tired enough to sleep, and that means, for once, you are lucky. The breath of the goat tickles the back of your leg. Someone's heel nudges yours and doesn't move away. You don't shift. You don't need to. The fire is almost out, and that's someone else's problem now. You did enough today. You did more than enough. The night deepens. Your body sinks further. The world grows quiet, even though it doesn't. A brittle silence settles around you like a trap, taut and waiting. It follows the day's exhaustion, thickening the air, pressing your shoulders into the straw beneath. You lay still, the quilt heavy and familiar, your nightly shield against wind, cold, and half-forgotten sun. But beneath the hush of slumber, behind the creaks and coughs, there is something else. A soft friction of voices, swallowed too quickly to name. They come as hisses, half-breathed, urgent, secret. You don't need to hear the words to understand the exchange. Two bodies, pressed too close for comfort, and yet too distant for kindness, negotiating space, warmth, authority. You don't move. You know better. Not when silence is fragile. Instead, you lie still, senses heightened, a witness to feuds wrapped in borrowed darkness. There is an intimacy in whispered argument that daylight denies. It is not the rushed declarations of heated voices, but the sharp, precise art of restraint. You listen to the rhythm, the inhale before a clipped word, the exhale like a spent match. It is the flicker of friction under skin, a warmth that spreads without releasing heat. It is different from laughter, different from crying. It is life's insistence on edge. You feel it through the room. A sibling across the way tenses, mattress shifting in half-suppressed protest. A goat crouches near your feet, ears swiveling, more attuned to body language than language itself. You hear the shift of straw, the slide of cloth, the catch-in breath that signals hold, release, repeat. The quilt around you vibrates with it, your own heartbeat joining in the murmur of barely visible conflict. Your breath softens, becomes careful. You sense unspoken words like tremors under the floorboards, vibrations in the walls that weren't there at the dusk. There's no aggression, no anger, not really. This is quieter. The small embarrassments, jealousies, unmet needs that bubble beneath coziness. The tug for space, the complaint over blankets, the irritation at someone else's elbow carved from your rib. You think of your own half-resentments held too tightly. A cot too close, a quilt too short, a cough that edges closer to the brink of waking. There is solidarity in shared discomfort, but also rivalry. Night does nothing to equalize us. It simply offers a stage for every grievance to be whispered into existence. The room's edges darken behind your eyelids. Your brother shifts again, imperceptibly, but decisively. It is answered by another rustle. You imagine their bodies, curled, unwilling to retreat, yet unable to rest. The quilt tugs at corners, each tug measured, careful, as though it might tear at the final fabric that binds them. Hisses repeat, a quiet chant of two unwilling to yield, each unwilling to give way. The goat shifts its weight on your foot, a small jolt in your consciousness, a reminder of your own insignificance in this contested territory. You flex your toes, willing the goat to keep still. Not time for participation. You are spectator, not judge. You breathe deeper. You feel the swell of chest beneath wool, the contours of straw shifting beneath bodies. The quilt gathers warmth around your midsection as temperature ebbs from other places. Cold toes, stiff shoulders. Hissing pauses for a moment. A breath is held, then released. Another movement. The rhythm replays. The conflict doesn't want resolution. No one is seeking closure. It is a ritual, a dance. The give and take of humans forgetting that they can simply lie still, share warmth generously. Instead, they whisper friction, carry it through the hours, warming nothing but pride and bitterness. You feel a wave of empathy. You feel fatigue deeper than the bones, a slender ache in your groin from too much time on straw. You remember your own nocturnal complaints, when you felt smothered, when someone blocked your air. You wish to move closer, ease the tension. But equally, you fear disrupting the fragile balance. Silence, after all, can be a scarce resource. You let your breath ease, synchronize with the room. Perhaps someone else will feel that ease and echo it. Perhaps the anger will expire without fanning. Perhaps sleep will take them both. And yet, you know that sleep is not negotiable. It doesn't open to tears or pleas. It looms outside the quilt, waiting like a creditor. The only way to win it is through surrender. But not all are willing to surrender to comfort. Some demand their own piece of warmth, even if it costs someone else's. There is a creak of floorboard, someone shifting, or the house settling. The hiss cuts short, replaced by thin silence, then another murmur. You feel the quilt tighten around you, as though you too are being held. You breathe, careful and slow to not rouse anyone. You sink deeper into straw. You fight the urge to shift. Sleep is waiting. Your mind drifts to earlier that day, the trudge to the field, the aching hands, the cracked back. You felt the same friction then, between workmates over share of soil, watering time, who gets the better scythe. In daylight, bitterness is shoved away, replaced by necessity and the scrutiny of neighbors. In darkness, it returns. It leaks back into conversations, asleep or awake. The goat nudges your thigh softly. You glance at it, its mottled coat pressed close to yours, its breath warm and rhythmic. Neither you nor it speaks. We share the night quietly, each following our rhythms, tensions tucked into the marrow. Time stretches saggingly. The bell is hours from its next toll. The roosters have long since stopped crowing, too ashamed of their efforts. The house lies among embers of communal exhaustion. Your own eyelids flicker. Restart, you think. But you don't move. You hold still. You feel sleep's gentle tax come due. It will arrive on its own terms. Meanwhile, you lie. Underneath, the hisses continue or fade. You cannot tell. You start to dream of quilt mended, of bodies sharing warmth without friction, of a lullaby that eases anger rather than stokes it. It is a fragile dream. You cradle it gently inside your mind. The room grows dimmer. The straw grows still beneath your side. The quilt settles in. The argument recedes, becomes part of the night's archive, something to be sorted in morning's light, but not yet. You let sleep gather around you. It eases into the quilt folds. It opens a doorway beneath your ribs. You inhale deep, tasting straw, sweat, and quilt. You exhale, emptying tension, doubt, pride. No, you cannot salvage everything. But maybe, just for tonight, you can rest. Your breath slips into drift. The hissed whispers from earlier have quieted now, like smoke finally pulled through a hole in the roof and lost to the night. You think the argument was over something small. Someone took up too much room. Or maybe someone didn't, and the silence made it worse. But now, there's just the layered stillness again, the kind where every breath in the room is counted, known, weighed. Someone has turned away from you and curled tight into themselves, like they're hoping their spine can become a wall. You try not to think about who it was or why it stung. That's for daylight, or never. The fire is nearly gone. You can feel its absence on your toes first, no longer wrapped in a cushion of heat, just there, dumbly waiting to be cold. You didn't bank it properly, or someone else didn't. It's not clear anymore. The blame seems far away, like something you once cared about but now can't hold on to. It's like trying to catch mist with your fingertips, annoying, pointless, damp. And so you lie there, in the thick soup of darkness, in the time between arguments and rising. This is the hour when thoughts come sideways. They slink in, not marching like proper ideas, but slithering along the gaps in your memory. They say strange things without saying them. Things about what you saw just before sleep. Things you didn't mean to think about. Things you would never mention in the morning. There was something in the fire last night, wasn't there? Not in the flame, but just beyond it. You were staring, half to stay awake, half to forget the scratching in your shirt. And something moved. It might have been a sibling shifting. It might have been the goat blinking in her corner. It might have been something else entirely, something your mind squinted at but never named. But it watched, or shimmered, or breathed, and then it was gone. You don't say things like that out loud, not even to yourself in full thoughts. But your body remembers. The little hairs on your neck seem to be consulting each other. Your shoulders sink lower into the straw, as if depth is safety. Somewhere near your feet, the dog gives a low whine, chasing rabbits in its sleep, or warning something you don't want to imagine. You press your legs together and don't ask why. Even your dreams have grown strange. Less like stories, more like moods with shapes. You saw your mother walking through barley that waved like water. You saw someone faceless eating your last heel of bread, but you thanked them. You heard a bell that rang without sound, just vibration in your ribs. And you woke, unsure whether it had been sleep or prophecy or just something you ate. The bread's been odd lately, hasn't it? Damp too long or baked too hot. The crust is hard enough to fight with, but the inside clings to your teeth like regret. Maybe the dreams are from that, or from the neighbor's herbs. She put something in the stew that made your ears feel thick. You didn't ask what. No one ever asks. You shift again. The straw has molded itself to you, like a memory foam mattress designed by someone who hated you a little. One rib rests on something sharp. You shift again. Now the other rib is worse. You settle, not because it's better, but because you're tired of choosing. There's a murmur near the far wall. The old man coughs in his sleep, then mumbles something in a tone that suggests it's better you didn't hear the words. You don't know his name. Or maybe you did, years ago. But now he's just the one who sleeps by the clay jar and smells like elderberries gone bad. He has stories, probably. You hope he doesn't try to tell them again. Someone else makes a soft, choking noise. It's nothing. Or it is everything. You lie still, just in case the sound doesn't like to be noticed. It passes, leaving behind the faint scent of old milk and wool. Someone exhales. There are many things you do not say aloud. Not here. Not in the longhouse with its leaking thatch and its overly familiar rodents. You do not mention the shadow that stood by the door until the rooster cried. You do not mention how sometimes, when everyone is asleep, you think the house breathes, but not with you. You do not mention that you still count the days since that one winter, even though no one else seems to. You do not mention the dreams that feel like memories, or the memories that feel like warnings. Morning has a way of sanding down the edges. The chill forces focus. The chores arrive like guests who let themselves in. There is gruel to stir and animals to check, and a sibling who will not stop asking questions with his face. These are the things that matter, not what you dreamed, not what you heard. Your fingers find your forehead and rub at it. It's become a habit, wiping away nothing. You think you used to have clearer thoughts, or maybe you just didn't notice when they weren't. Either way, the fog has settled into you now. It's not the outside kind, the sort that drapes the fields like a misplaced bedsheet. It's internal, software woolen, unshakable. You try to find your breath. There it is, slow and shallow. One part of you is always testing for fever now, like a shepherd checking for wolves by sniffing the wind. You aren't sick, probably, but the warmth in your joints is suspicious. You ignore it. A bit of light creeps under the door, not golden, but grayish. The sort of light that doesn't inspire. It accuses. It implies you've already wasted something. You turn your head and listen, hoping for some excuse to stay flat a little longer. But the house has begun to rustle. A creak, a snort, a fart, a sigh. Life reassembling itself from the scattered limbs of sleep. The goat coughs or laughs. You're not sure anymore. Someone rolls over and mutters a name. Not yours, not anyone's as far as you know. But the tone is tender and sad, like a thread pulling through fabric that's already been mended twice too many times. You pretend you didn't hear it. And so the morning inches closer. You will rise. You will mutter. You will pretend you slept better than you did. And you will not mention any of it. The shadows, the sounds, the memories that don't quite belong to you. Because in this house, silence is a kind of pact. We all pretend we dream nothing, that we're just tired from the work, that what happened in the dark is best left in the dark, that nothing watches, that nothing whispers. You stretch your fingers toward your boots, already stiff from the damp. Somewhere behind you, a child groans awake, tangled in their blanket like a moth in a spider web. Someone else begins coughing with enough commitment to suggest it might be their main task for the day. You brace yourself for movement, and in that brief second before your feet touch the ground, before the cold climbs you like a ladder, before the first chore finds your name, you hear it, faint, distant, broken by sleep but unmistakably real. A small, soft voice talking in its dreams. And you think, maybe it's better not to listen too closely. The night leaves traces, not footprints. Those are for boots and beasts. But impressions, smudges in the fabric of your thoughts, like someone pressed their thumb too hard against the inside of your skull and then walked off without apologizing. The fire has burned low again. Of course it has. The air feels older than usual, sour with damp wool and something sweeter, almost metallic, like blood or overripe apples. Someone was coughing earlier. They stopped a while ago. You're not sure when. Your body aches in the same 3 places it always does. The shoulder that carries the bucket, the knee that doesn't like stairs, and the lower back that disapproves of everything, especially lying down. But tonight there's something new. A twitch behind the eye. A tightness in your stomach. Not pain. Just a sensation that something happened. Or almost happened. Or might have happened to someone else entirely, but somehow got filed under you in the ledger of the night. You shift on the straw mattress. The sound it makes is familiar. Dry, scratchy, like a broom being dragged over coarse stone. But it feels louder now, as if the night has grown thinner and more fragile. Everyone is breathing, but not evenly. There's a rhythm to the room, yes, but it isn't yours. Someone dreams fast. Someone breathes too deep. Someone grinds their teeth as if trying to chew through a memory. And still, you don't say anything. You never do. That moment before sleep, when your body has surrendered, but your mind still tries to give a final opinion, is the moment when things slip through. Images you didn't invent. Words you've never heard. Sensations that feel like falling, or drowning, or stepping barefoot onto something alive. They visit without names, those moments. You don't discuss them in the morning, because if you did, you might have to admit they were real. And in a world this cold, this damp, this bleak, there's only so much room for reality. You remember the dream from last night. Not all of it. Just the part where someone's hand reached out of a wall. It wasn't scary, exactly. It was curious. The kind of dream that lingers like a wet thread caught between your toes. You didn't tell anyone about it. You wouldn't. They'd just nod and say something about too much barley or too little prayer. But deep down, you know the wall it reached from wasn't part of the dream. You've seen that wall in the barn or the church, or maybe in your own thoughts, behind the ones you admit to having. The straw rustles again, and you're suddenly aware that your toes are cold. Not numb, not uncomfortable. Cold in a specific way, as if they've been forgotten by the rest of your body. Left out like firewood someone meant to bring in but didn't. You shift again, trying to tuck them into the crook of your leg, and brush against something softer than straw. A blanket? Number A sleeve. Someone's arm. You don't know whose. You don't want to know. It's not important. There's a whisper somewhere nearby. A real one. Not the kind that your brain makes up when it's bored and half asleep. A real hush. Words, but not for you. Not about you either. Something about water, or wolves, or a child. You freeze. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Some things in the night are like rituals. Interrupting them is like sneezing during a funeral. You stay still. You listen. You forget. When morning comes, and it always does, whether you're ready or not, no one will mention the whispering, or the dream hand, or the shadow that moved across the beams slower than it should have. They'll talk about oats and chores and who's hogging the wool. They'll grumble about the damp or the piglet who got out again. But the night will hang just behind their eyes, heavy and quiet, like the steam off a dying fire. There are things you simply do not speak aloud. The feeling that someone was watching through the cracks in the wall. The sound of something breathing that wasn't a person or a goat or anything else you'd want to share floor space with. The faint press of a weight beside you when no one had entered. You do not mention how your dreams seem to smell like smoke now, even when there's no fire. Instead, you pull your tunic tighter, scratch at something you pretend is a flea, and nod along to the small complaints of the morning. Your feet touch the packed dirt floor like they've done it for centuries. The same floor, the same aches, the same secrets, piling up quietly beneath the straw. The worst part is not the discomfort. It's the near certainty that everyone else feels it too. And yet, like you, they hold their silence. Not because they're brave, but because there's no reward for naming the strange. The strange simply becomes part of the night, like the cold, or the creaking of the wood, or the rustle of the sleeping child who never seems to stop talking, even in dreams. You make no comment about the soot smudge on your wrist that wasn't there when you went to bed. You don't ask why your sister keeps glancing toward the rafters, even in daylight. You certainly don't mention the rhythm your heart took on last night. Slow, then fast, then something else entirely, like it was listening to a different song. The morning never asks questions. It just arrives, shoulders first, like a relative you didn't invite. And in the presence of sunlight, however dim, the night folds itself away like a blanket you pretend is clean. But not everything retreats. Some memories cling, damp and heavy, to the corners of your mind. A dream about the river flowing backward. the sound of someone reciting a prayer in a language no one speaks anymore, the weight of your own name when it echoed in the dream, sounding somehow wrong. You don't say a word. You never do. You just bank the fire again, stir the ashes with hands still half asleep, and try not to think about how the air smells faintly of rosemary, or something that only remembers being rosemary. There's a child in the house who talks in their sleep. Everyone knows it. No one discusses it. And tonight, just like every other night, they'll start speaking again. Not to you, not about you, but somehow, always at the exact moment your eyes are almost closed. And the worst part is, you always listen. The house has fallen quieter than usual. Even the child, whose nightly nonsense once rose and fell like waves against the boards, has slipped into silence. You don't know if you miss it. The muttering, the turning, the odd laugh that didn't belong to any known memory. There is something comforting in chaos, in the cluttered noise of restless bodies. Stillness, though. Stillness feels final, and so you lie in the dark, breathing slower now, but not too slow, not enough to draw the attention of that vast, invisible weight that sometimes mistakes sleep for surrender. Your body aches, which is familiar, reassuring even. The straw beneath you has taken the shape of your spine like old bread dough left too long in the same pan. It cradles your ribs awkwardly, tucks a splinter into your thigh, and seems to remember where you are before you do. The blanket, if you can call it that, is more a suggestion than a solution. It traps the cold as much as it keeps it out, a heavy wool sheet that smells of damp sheep and long, bitter nights. And still, you do not move. There is a small mercy in this hour, not because the world is kind, but because it is tired too. The wind has stopped scratching at the shutters. The goat, who snores louder than you do, has finally curled into its own private woolen storm. Your stomach, though hollow, has made peace with its emptiness, like a child who knows there's no use crying when the pot has long since cooled. Your eyes flutter in the dark, catching flickers of something, perhaps dreams, perhaps the last glow of the coals behind your lids. This is not sleep exactly. It's something that hovers just before it, a suspension, like dough resting after kneading, flattened, stretched, bruised, but slowly giving in to the softness of its own edges. You are, in this moment, no longer waiting for comfort. You are simply sinking through discomfort, like a stone through thick flour. You think of nothing. Or perhaps you think of everything all at once, in those vague, meaningless shapes that thoughts take just before they melt. A bowl of stew that never arrived, a neighbor's smirk, a fence that needs mending, the way your foot still hurts from that time you stepped on a spindle root, the warmth of a hand once held, long ago, or maybe imagined. None of it matters, and yet it all lingers, drifting like smoke above your barely beating body. Someone beside you coughs. Once. A small sound, but enough to remind you you're not alone. That the heat you feel, what little there is shared. That sleep here is not a private act, but a communal surrender. You sleep because others sleep. Because the arguments have ceased. Because the fire has burned as far down as it can go. Because you've already thought all your thoughts. Because the lice have given up for now, too full or too cold to bother. Because the roof isn't leaking tonight. Because you've lived through another day without falling too far behind in the invisible race of survival. Your toes, bent from years of damp boots and uneven fields, curl instinctively, feeling for the soft edge of someone else's calf, just to confirm that they're still warm, still breathing, still human. It's not affection, it's reassurance, like knocking on wood or touching the lintel before you cross a threshold. These are the rituals of sleep, not prayers, just habits, formed in fear and worn smooth with repetition. Above, the beams creak faintly, the kind of sound you don't hear so much as feel, deep in your molars, in the marrow of your shin bones. The longhouse has settled for the night, and so have you. Settled doesn't mean comfortable, of course. It means the fight has ended for now. The cold has won, but gently. The air no longer bites. It lingers. Heavy. Software almost generous in its weight. You do not sigh. There's no strength left for it. You simply exhale, slowly, as if letting go of the day requires permission, or at least patience. And still, sleep doesn't arrive all at once. It tiptoes in, sniffing around the edges of your awareness like a cautious stray. It circles once, then again, then again. It presses down on your eyelids, pulls at the strings behind your knees, flattens your tongue. The bread of your body has cooled. Not risen, not triumphant, just settled, dense, slightly sour, the way life tastes when it's been baked too close to the fire. You are not the baker. You are not even the flour. You are the result, rough, necessary, edible only in parts. But you are here, cooling, breathing, becoming still. The thoughts, which once swarmed like wasps around your temples, now drift like ash. Slow, dark, inevitable. You no longer care where they came from, or what they mean, or if they'll return tomorrow. Tomorrow is too large to fit inside the room. There's no space for it here, between the beams and the bodies and the breath. What you have now is the slow press of gravity against your sternum, the numb fingertips tucked beneath your chin, the dry crust at the edge of your mouth, the scratch of wool against your neck, which you've stopped trying to adjust, the creak of a floorboard where no one stands, the scent of yesterday's turnips on someone else's breath. You are not afraid. Not of death, not of sleep, not of the ache in your shoulder or the chill behind your knee. These are old companions, predictable ones. You are afraid only of being awake, of continuing, of the long, slow thought that loops again and again without end. But even that thought is fading now, blurring at the edges, softening like dough left too long near the hearth. There is a kind of peace here, in this forgetting. Not joy, not relief, just absence of struggle, of awareness, of needing to be anything but what you already are. The final flicker of the coals has vanished. The night holds its breath, and you, pressed into the straw, wrapped in smells and weight and warmth, finally do not resist. Sleep does not come like a lover. It comes like a heavy lid falling shut, and for once, it stays. You do not stir. You do not dream. You do not know where your body ends and the cold begins, and it does not matter. You are, at last, what you've been chasing since sunset. Still, warm enough, gone enough, like bread forgotten on the table, settled, quiet, slowly cooling in the dark. And somewhere, in the straw behind you, a child shifts, just slightly, then stills again, because in this world, even silence has a sound. And sleep, like everything else here, is shared.